An emergency investigation was called after a serious error was discovered. Huge, unknown creatures were approaching the city, but this location had to be completely protected. They destroyed everything in their path, maiming people around them. The red-haired guy holding the little girl Ellis in his arms begged her to come to her senses. His eyes were filled with pain and worry, and he continued to scream. Suddenly, she came to her senses and turned to her older brother, asking him to run. Ellis was powerless, and tears were running down her cheeks. The ground around them shook from the guard's foot stepping very close. He towered over them, far surpassing the humans in size. This creature formed a glowing ball with which it could destroy anything. A huge beam of light emanated from the center of the city, causing houses to fall apart into pieces. Smoke from the explosion was visible near the boy. He was crawling over the destroyed rocks, trying to get out and groaning in pain. He only wanted to see his sister Ellis even when he lost his left arm and leg. There was despair, fear, and pain in his eyes at the same time. This turned out to be what he feared most. The guy screamed at the top of his lungs because she was the closest person to him. He didn't understand why such a terrible situation happened to him. Hugging his head, the guy sobbed and begged for it all to stop. The girl touched him with her little hand and asked for forgiveness. Her last words before she completely disappeared were that her brother must definitely survive. Ellis dissolved into the sky, and all that remained of her was a bracelet with a blue stone. It all felt like a dream, like the worst dream from which there was no way to escape. A stranger met the guy and informed him that the error had been found and the threat level was low. Everything was correct. One of the reasons for the error was that same boy with red hair, since there was a possibility of turning into a dangerous virus. This stranger stood in a black cloak with a hood pulled up and an iron mask that covered his entire face except his left eye. The guy was supposed to be permanently deleted. The man pointed a beam at him to carry out his task. Kneeling, he had already come to terms with it because it seemed like the whole world was against him and the worst was only coming to him. They just wanted to live a normal life like everyone else, but a series of tragedies followed one after another. Why did they need to be removed? In a world that was terrorized by magical creatures, one day, players chosen by the system suddenly appeared and subsequently began to hunt them. People were sincerely devoted to their saviors because thanks to them, the threat of attack by magical creatures on ordinary people receded. However, the peaceful life did not last long. After some time, players began to treat them like toys, as if it was normal. They committed many atrocities against them, but despite this, ordinary people could not respond to them in any way. The reason for all these terrible actions was the system moderator. Anyone who went against the system was labeled as an error, and such people were removed during an update or check. To be honest, the guy didn't care about the moderator or the players. His life with his younger sister was filled with too many difficult trials, so he had no time to think about such things. For both of them, such regular checks only played into their hands. After all, while they were being held, everyone seemed to freeze, but he and Ellis, surprisingly, were able to move. Why it was that way didn't matter to him. The most important thing was to stay alive. The sword sharpening failed and it split in half. The guy froze in fear. He was clearly in trouble. A punch landed with full force on the jaw. The guy fell to the floor quickly and his sledgehammer flew off with a crash. There was a full 50% chance of success, and he managed to fail. The guy who hit him became indignant that he lost his valuable resources because of him. When he imagined exactly how much he would seethe with anger and wish for death, kicking the poor boy with his feet. His friend suggested leaving him because with such power he would die sooner or later. The player didn't care. For him, people like the red-haired man were just NPCs. The system would have loaded him back anyway. The two finally left, leaving the guy alone. If there were no karma penalties, he would have taken revenge on him and finished him off. His sister Ellis came up from behind and asked if everything was okay. Her brother told her not to come down here because it was dangerous, but the girl just wanted to help somehow. The sister was worried about her brother and did not understand why they were so cruel, because he did not break the equipment on purpose. The guy calmed her down, saying that everything was fine and this was normal player behavior. The girl promised to grow up quickly so she could help her brother. The guy didn't care that his job was difficult and that the players thought he was trash. As long as Ellis was by his side and he could protect her, he didn't care. However, certain situations forced us to break these strong family ties. What was wrong with this fucking system? Why did they have to be removed? The guy wanted to destroy the system at all costs. His eyelids gradually closed and everything around him disappeared, and he found himself in zero gravity. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a hand appeared and grabbed his head. An error occurred. This location was fully protected and Aiden was restored. It was time for him to fulfill his role. The guy was shocked. He found himself in the same place where he was last time, between the rubble of the city. How did he manage to return? He clearly remembered where he had ended up when he was removed. 3 messages appeared in front of Aiden. The first was about gaining first-level moderator powers. The second was about the command line being locked, and the third was about gaining access to use commands. The players walked around Edelin Island in the Pansan Forest. One of them was clearly upset by the new update, since the previous one was 100 years ago. He resigned himself to the fact that the updates did not provide any obvious changes. This time, the error zone was cleared. Why was it necessary to undergo verification if nothing changed? A crowd of people gathered around the blacksmith's tent. This player approached a couple of men to ask what was going on. It was a sharpening event. Here you could increase the sharpening level by spending only gold, not resources. Apparently it was a secret event because there was no mention of it in the announcement. One of the guys had a successful sharpening. He was incredibly happy. This player invited others to feel the same in the event. If not now, then there would be no other chance in life. Shouts of requests to sharpen them too could be heard from the crowd. Among the people, the same cruel player who had beaten the guy for the broken sword was running towards the center. He stated that it was now his turn, calling Aiden NSP again. This phrase made him mentally return to that day of pain and humiliation. Without any respect, he handed over a bag of swords and ordered them all to be improved. Everyone began to be indignant at such impudence, but it was impossible to start a fight because of the karma penalty. These 2 brazen fellows were well-known dealers in the area. They had a bad character. They were always causing problems for others. One guy in the crowd thought that they probably wouldn't have long before they got a fine. 2 dealers were discussing this red-haired blacksmith boy from the village. They thought he was very lucky to have survived after them. They also noticed that he was alone, without a little girl, and apparently she was removed. Hearing this, Aiden became furious and somehow voiced the probability of success at 25%. The guy asked again if the buyers were confident in their choice. It was a fairly low success rate. The player believed that he had a nose for profitable deals, and even if he managed to sharpen one of the 4 swords, he would come out on top. His partner began to doubt, because if he lost, his fortune would go down the drain, but the guy irritably ordered him not to panic. While the sharpening process was going on, they continued the dialogue. The player convinced his friend of success and promised to reimburse the money spent tenfold in case of failure. The blacksmith improved their weapons and thought to himself that they were all rotten people, and it was as if he specifically wanted to ruin their day. After all, it was up to him to decide what condition the swords would be in. He hit them with a heavy sledgehammer with all his might, and the sharpening failed. A pile of broken weapons fell down, and this player was stunned by what he saw. Apparently, Aiden was very pleased with the revenge he had taken, saying that it was just an accident. 2 guys from the crowd were amused by this situation and laughed at the misfortune of that impudent player. Suddenly, his partner grabbed him by the shirt, shouting about his promises to return the entire amount he had lost tenfold, because he made him feel hopeless. This losing player makes excuses that he is not guilty, and the blacksmith decided to give him a piece of his mind out of revenge. People in the crowd were outraged by what was happening and ordered them to go to another place during the fight. Time was running out. Everyone rushed to run and take the first places in the queue. The city was already in the dark of night, but the lights were still visible in the windows of the houses. Finally, this rather difficult day ended. Aiden came home tired and sat down near the bed. In front of him were several bags filled to the brim with gold coins. What he had received today would be enough. With that kind of money, he wouldn't have to worry about anything for a long time. Now he was counting on picking up the reward for completing the quest Hold One event. On the day he survived, inscriptions appeared before his eyes that he had never seen before. The tab told about Aiden's status, name, level, vital signs, and the like. The event update has been unlocked. The command input line has appeared. The guy was confused. The ability to enter a command was only available to the moderator, but surprisingly, he could use it. This screen lit up with a bright golden light. A new quest was added about holding the first event, which really shocked the guy. He realized he needed to calm down and put all his thoughts about the recent events together. First of all, he was resurrected by an unknown force. But regular NPCs didn't receive quests. Only someone with moderator powers could do something like that. Obviously, this stranger had a reason, but why did he choose him? Suddenly he remembered a terrible memory. It was the moment of his younger sister Alice's death that he took so hard. Gritting his teeth, he said he didn't care about anything. If he could get revenge on the moderator, he could use him as much as he wanted, but in return, the guy would use him. After these words, Aiden abruptly pressed the button to end the event. The system took his actions into account and increased his moderator level to the second, and a new update was unlocked. Now the guy could open the locked thing and promise that he would definitely try it out someday. It was very good that the level of authority had increased. It seemed like nothing terrible was going to happen. No matter how you look at it, Aiden was still weak and couldn't even defeat the newcomers. If he is labeled as a bug, then during the next check the guy will not be able to do anything and will simply be deleted. While he was thinking about some way around all this, the screen began to shine brightly again. This was a new quest added, it said, to find one Easter egg and gave the location. This task reminded Eden of something like a treasure hunt. There was nothing to worry about. He shouldn't rush. But there were no other options either. In order to survive, the guy must complete quests. After these words, he went to complete the task. Apparently the Easter egg wasn't that far away. Looking at the beam in the distance, towards which followed many small lights, he decided to go there at dawn. A lonely mountain towered above the forests and fields on a bright day. Aiden found himself in a different place than he expected, although he was heading where he was told. In front of him stood a huge gate that led into the dungeon. The dungeon was a place where players went down to improve their abilities. He couldn't believe that he was finally here. Some unknown person was hiding behind the trees and watching Aiden. The guy looked at the huge entrance to the dungeon with admiration. He couldn't lose his head. If he let fear take hold of him now, it would only get worse later. Compared to the mobs the moderator brought that day, these were nothing. Opening the gates, he stepped inside and disappeared into the darkness. Suddenly a warning appeared that access was restricted. Entry was only possible from level 80 and above. The moderator's authority level is sufficient to open access. The entire dungeon was teeming with growling, angry monsters. Players have always had to face such terrifying monsters. This guy was very lucky that he did not run into any of them. He was walking along an unusual road with passages around him that resembled an anthill. Aiden felt like he was outside the world. At the end of the road, the guy stopped and looked up in surprise. In front of him was another gate on which was a sign with the number 1. They looked as if they were made of crystal. After pushing them a couple of times, he realized that they wouldn't budge. But Aiden believed that once he had reached this point, there was no turning back. Maybe he should have taken advantage of the opportunity he got yesterday. The update was successfully unlocked and the screen started flashing red sparks. An unlock icon appeared on the doors and they swung open. The boy himself did not expect this and therefore watched it with his mouth open. He went inside, but the bright light blinded him and he had to cover his eyes with his hand. Aiden found himself in a spacious hall in the middle of which a beam of light emanated, directed upward. Coming closer, the guy realized that this was the very same Easter egg. He finally found it. Suddenly a strange rustling sound was heard. It seemed that something terrible was about to happen. Looking up, he saw a man flying towards him with a weapon in his hands. A lot of dust rose up around him from the landing. Aiden somehow managed to jump away from where he was standing. He looked at the arriving monster with fear and did not understand where magical creatures came from. Having run away, this monster with all its might injured Aiden's hand with its large sword and continued to strike one after another. He had nothing left to lose, and all he could do was try to protect himself. The guy barely parried his blows and he wouldn't have lasted long. There was only one way out left, to go on the attack. An unexpected blow pierced Aiden's shoulder, causing him to wince in pain. Taking the weapon more firmly in his hand, he struck back straight at the head. It seemed to him that he had already won the victory. But surprisingly, purple flames were coming from the neck and the monster continued to stand in place. A second later, there followed a sharp and powerful blow to the face. The guy flew off the wall with a crash from the force of the blow. Apparently, the body of this monster was hollow. How was that even possible? Lying among the rubble, he regretted coming here because he knew that nothing would work out for him. At that moment, his whole life flashed before his eyes. He remembered all the sad and happy memories associated with his younger sister, Ellis. Suddenly, the boy remembered her last words. She said that he absolutely had to survive. He took out his sledgehammer from behind his back and seemed to receive a new surge of strength. Aiden will be able to survive and become closer to his goal by fulfilling Ellis's words. Gathering his courage, he stood up and showed that he was ready for battle. Using a sledgehammer, he struck directly at his opponent's sword, which managed to split it and stop the battle. After that, a message about unsuccessful sharpening came, which meant that the system recognized it as equipment and not a magical creation. This was his last chance to win the fight. The guy realized that he had gained complete power over the monster and struck one after another. After each time, notifications about unsuccessful sharpening appeared. It was only when Aiden saw the wreckage of the creature around him with practically nothing left that he calmed down. Now there was access to completing the quest with finding the Easter egg. The golden light from the egg changed to the same crystal blue as the gate to the hall. All this energy rushed towards Aiden, enveloping his body. After completing this quest, his moderator level was increased to the 3rd level, and he was also given a new ability. Apparently the lights brought the guy here for this new ability. Now was not the time to think, it was time to go home. When he came outside, he felt extremely bad due to numerous wounds and blows. Aiden felt like he was going to pass out soon. Right at the entrance to the dungeon, he collapsed on the cold tiles from exhaustion. The man who was watching him looked out from behind a tree and saw the guy unconscious. He crept closer and stood directly above Aiden. Having taken off the hood, it turned out to be a young and beautiful blue-haired girl. She smiled timidly and looked at the exhausted boy. A flying ball was quickly heading towards the hall where Aiden had fought the monster in the dungeon. A passerby was heading towards the camera. He began scanning the remaining parts of the creature. He confirmed that the dungeon keeper had been destroyed. Traces of the bug were also found. The threat level was low. Urgent intervention was required to take emergency measures. Having opened the portal, the scanner teleported to report the situation. The girl was still standing over Aiden and noting something in the system. Suddenly, the guy began to come to his senses and showed signs of life. The girl grabbed his hand and brought it to the sensor to press the button. He jumped up in surprise and jumped back, asking who she was. The pretty girl greeted me sweetly and introduced herself as Arya. The guy immediately guessed that she was a player and began checking her status to make sure he was right. But she assured him not to worry because she was a good person. The status check failed because it was private and her karma contained a random set of characters. It was some kind of absurdity. The minimum possible karma was -100, and that meant that this was no ordinary player. Aiden was extremely cautious and clearly did not want to contact her, asking her to get away. It turned out that, on the contrary, she helped him and cured him with the help of a potion, of which, by the way, she did not have many. Indeed, he checked the wounds all over his body and they were found to be healed. It was a gesture of goodwill. She explained her actions by saying that she had never met anyone like him before and that he interested her very much. Her words seemed like some kind of nonsense to Aiden. Once again, a golden screen lit up in front of him, which meant a new quest. Why did the quest appear now? It was not a very convenient moment, but thank God only he saw the quest window. Be that as it may, he had no desire to get involved with a suspicious player, so he needed to get away from here as quickly as possible. He thanked her for her help, and since she didn't ask for anything in return, he was going to go. Humming a melody, Arya watched the guy leave. Before he got too far, she sent many requests in a row asking to be added as a friend. This only got on his nerves, and he ordered that they stop following him. However, this did not upset Arya at all, and she asked why she could not go with him. He was not exactly strong, and at any moment he could fall down again, but then no one would help him. The guy rudely replied that she should stop bothering him. However, Arya was right, because Aiden was in a dangerous situation right now, but he didn't even notice. Arya asked the guy to turn around, and a wolf-like creature had already rushed up behind him. At that very moment, Aiden pulled a sword out of his inventory with one hand and was able to repel the attack. A whole flock of predatory magical creatures gathered around him. Apparently, they smelled the blood that remained on his clothes from the previous battle. The situation was difficult, and the girl offered her help, but the guy decided to refuse and prove that he could handle it himself. There was no option here. To complete the new quest, he had to kill them. There was no other way to become stronger before the start of the next test. With just one blow, he was able to kill several magical creatures at once. Meanwhile, the ball arrived back to transmit the data. He reported that the Easter egg had been lost to its owner, who thought it would be difficult to steal. The dungeon keeper was equipped with immortal armor. In theory, he was unbeatable. It all seemed very strange. If nothing was done, the moderator would soon find out about what had happened. The man was going to check this situation personally. He was a middle-aged man with long gray hair, a long tie, and a long jacket, and he was a system operator named Lloyd. He was more than sure that this was all the work of the bugged one. The battle with the mythical creatures stopped. He somehow managed to cope and was very tired. It was very surprising that a simple NPC could defeat so many creatures. A bright golden screen lit up, which meant that he had a new ability called editing, and he thought it was really good. Now Aiden could increase the characteristic points not only twice, but the consequences would not be long in coming. Next time, he would need to use the ability more carefully. She helped him a lot in many things, but it would be great to know what other abilities can be discovered. The guy also noticed that his level had not changed and his experience points were still 0. In order to become stronger in this world, he had to increase his level. There were 2 ways to do this. The first was by completing quests and the second was by hunting magical creatures. Aiden thought that there was some kind of mistake or glitch, and that he should try another method, and Arya sat and watched him. Following his logic, he would spend the next few days fighting magical creatures because he had no choice. Other NPCs did not give tasks, but no matter how many monsters the guy killed, no matter how many commands he entered, the level was in no hurry to increase. And only after so many battles it dawned on him. This was the limit of NPCs. They couldn't outdo themselves and do better than others. But the player selected by the system had every right to do so. Well, since he was not destined to be one of them, his destiny will remain on the outskirts of development. And what should he do now? Although hope did not fade, and he was sure that there was always a way out. While he was thinking, a girl called him and asked to add her as a friend again, which only made him angry, and he ordered her to disappear, but Arya just laughed. She was curious and asked why Aiden was so desperate to get stronger. But anyway, if he wanted to level up faster, then the easiest way to do it was through team play. He himself said that he couldn't do anything alone. Even if it worked, experience points would probably be given, which would be divided between them, members of the same team, so he would be able to become stronger. Surprisingly, he agreed to play with Arya, and she was stunned by these words because she did not expect his consent. The girl was incredibly happy to hear this and rushed to hug him. Once again, she asked to add Aiden as a friend while they got there, but he again told her to fuck off. They reached Hecla Gorge, but they were recommended to have level 50 to pass. Players among themselves called this boosting a friend. Arya warned him that he should stand still, otherwise, if he moved, he had a high risk of dying on the spot. She only helped her friends, and he didn't even want to accept her request. Judging by her behavior, hunting was a simple matter for her. To begin with, the guy decided to try everything he could. He would only be able to level up quickly if he earned experience points this way. He prayed that everything would work out. At this time, Arya calmly went into battle with huge monsters, having with her only 2, albeit small, but quite sharp swords. Apparently, she was a professional at this and without regret defeated everyone around her with one wave of her hand. Their plan worked successfully, the level rose as expected. While Aiden was rejoicing at the success of his plan, a flying scanner ball was watching him from behind the rocks. The bug has been detected and system operator Lloyd should arrive soon. By the way, the guy assumed that she was strong, but not that strong. It was still unclear to him why she followed him. Arya noticed something strange behind the boy. The quest was completed and the level was increased, and the ability points finally increased. Her battle was swift. He sighed, regretting how many days he had wasted before. The guy wondered what he could spend his reward on, and hoped that some new ability would open up. Suddenly he noticed that the girl was missing and started calling her because she promised to boost him. There was a broken scanner lying on the ground which warned that the object had been entered into the system during destruction and that numerous losses could occur. It was Arya who finally finished him off because the scanner was too noisy. She didn't know what it was, but it was really in the way. The girl would not allow anyone to touch her property. The guy received another friend invitation, but this time, surprisingly, he agreed. Arya was incredibly happy because she thought that Aiden thought she was good, but he told her to stop making so much noise. He just added her as a friend. There was nothing unusual about that. At the moment, the guy's level was 30. He began to travel with a player named Arya, whom he met by chance, and the guy still did not understand what she saw in him. However, the girl was very helpful to him, so he accepted the friend request anyway. It certainly won't make things worse. By the way, he used the reward he received after the battle with Arya in editing, and I got the really needed skill, class change. Now, he was no longer an NPC, but he was not a player either. Because the system began to recognize Aiden as a player, he was able to level up on his own. He had a long way to go ahead, but he had already become much stronger. The old him was nowhere near the current him. If only he had possessed such power back then, he would have been able to save his beloved sister. Arya noticed that something was wrong with the guy and called out to him. He took off and ran across the spacious, grassy field. Among the forests and fields, he saw a large, translucent blue wall, which frightened him very much. Arya explained that players called it a bad sector. It was an abandoned space by the system. It was an area that was cleared by a moderator, left to exist on its own, and over time, it turned into this. None of the players knew what could come out of this place. It held many secrets. Aiden ran down the hill and headed towards the area. Was he really going there? Arya asked him to wait for her and ran after him. They were already standing next to her. Now, the place where he lived had turned into something like this. The girl was in anticipation and really wanted to go inside. When I touched the wall, the color of this place changed from blue to red, and a hole appeared that I could enter. The girl grabbed the guy by the shoulder because only moderators and operators could get into the bad sector. As always, Aiden rudely asked to leave him alone. Arya thought the guy was special and looked at him with love. He did enter, but what was the point? There were only ruins and remains of the monsters' attacks around them. He had no need to do this. However, as he walked further, he noticed something and reached out to get his weapon. This something was hiding behind the mountains of garbage. If it was not a wild animal, then it was definitely a magical creature. It turned out to be a little boy who was very scared and covered his head with his hands out of fear. Aiden was surprised to see not a monster as he expected, but a child. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a bullet appeared and flew straight at the guy. Luckily, he was able to fight it off with his sword. A little further on the hill, the silhouette of a man was visible. It was a red-headed guy who was holding a pointed crossbow and called Henry to him. The little boy hid behind the guy and grabbed his pants leg tightly. The guy asked if they were players and continued to hold the gun pointed. He hadn't seen other people here for a long time and wondered how they got here. Aiden seemed suspicious to the guy, but it seemed he had no evil intentions. Arya had a very strong energy that came from her. Henry was worried about his uncle and asked if he was okay. She gave him the creeps. He had never seen players like her. What would he have to do if she had considered them enemies? Suddenly, another man appeared and called out to Master Jake. Worried, he ran to him and shouted that they had a problem. Running closer, he saw that there were players standing there and was shocked. The first thing he asked was how they got here. Mr. Jake asked what the problem was anyway. Helen's symptoms worsened, and this made Jake very worried. The red-headed guy immediately ran to her house and burst inside. The doctor was sitting next to Helen's bed. The guy was very tense and did not understand why this happened because there were no prerequisites, but the woman did not know either. Aiden and Arya stood in the aisle and watched the girl. Suddenly, something dawned on the guy and scared him greatly. The poor little girl's illness was unusual. Suddenly, Aiden received a message. It was a warning that a bug had been found and was of low threat level. A new emergency quest, destroy the found, error has been added. Jake begged the doctor to try something. Was there really no way to cure the disease? The girl doctor only timidly asked for forgiveness. Henry burst into the room and ran to the sick girl's bed. The uncle was clearly unhappy and shouted at the little boy, but he resisted. Henry tearfully asked Helen to open her eyes, and Jake ordered her not to touch her. Arya said that the girl must be in a very difficult situation, but it was too late. The red-headed guy and the doctor were very shocked and did not understand what she was talking about. They tearfully asked Arya to help them because she was a player and would surely be able to do something. The girl quietly replied that it was not a disease but a bug. Everyone stood and looked at her with horror. Jake couldn't believe his ears. This just couldn't be happening. Their homelands have turned into hell, but there is no one among them who would resist the system. Where could this bug come from? Arya explained that it appears not only in case of resistance to the system. Bugs can be different. There was nothing they could do to help her anymore. The worse she got, the more damage she would do to everyone around her. If they didn't want to be removed, they should have stayed away from here. Aiden was still standing behind the wall, and out of anger, he punched the wall. He still couldn't solve the problem of adding a new quest. Apparently, he was now being offered to kill this sick child. His screen lit up again, and a message popped up asking if he wanted to remove the error using his moderator powers. He was clearly panicking, but fortunately he chose the answer no. Then a notification appeared. He would be fined for not completing the quest. Had he really refused it? He was overwhelmed with emotion. The reason the system brought him here was this. Aiden believed that he was not the same as the system moderator, and I would never dare to obey his orders and kill an innocent girl. It didn't matter if it was a system or a bug. The guy was sure he would destroy everything. Aiden burst into the room where everyone was standing over the sick Helen. He asked to disperse in order to examine the girl. One of the guys got some hope and asked if there was a way to cure her. The guy wasn't sure, but it was worth a try. Henry grabbed him by the cloak from behind. He was crying loudly and asking to save his little sister. Aiden came closer and placed his hands on the sick woman's head. Editing abilities have been unlocked. The room was blinded by the bright light that emanated from the girl. Everyone in the room stood in shock, their mouths open. Aiden found himself inside the system's space with no end in sight. Once he had decided to take this step, he needed to find a way to save her. A bug is the result of a fatal error that occurs as a result of resistance to the system. So, taking the sword in his hands, he made a swing with his hand. Perhaps if he fails to completely separate the girl from the system and restore it again, he can save her. The girl was hanging in the system space but was cut off from the network. There were also hundreds of people around them connected to the system, and among them was Helen's family. The guy was standing next to the bed, from which a light emanated that resembled an explosion. Arya wasn't sure how possible that was. People covered their eyes with their hands to avoid going blind. This explosion spread to colossal proportions. It demolished everything it saw in its path. The blast wave was so strong that it was able to break the walls of the area. Aiden was very exhausted after this and was trying to pull himself together. The only thing he cared about was how it all went and whether he succeeded. He received a message that a hidden quest had been completed. A new command, Update Delete, had also been added. He was registered as the new moderator of Mount Urch. It turned out that he needed to get rid of the bug, not the child. The microsystem simply tested what choices the boy would make and whether he would be able to take risks. Aiden came to his senses after feeling Arya pouring healing potion on him and started screaming for her to stop. The girl began to squeeze the poor guy's cheeks and wanted to make sure everything was okay. She was very scared for him and asked him to be careful because he was an important person to her. While Aiden was holding Arya, a family from the area approached him and thanked him for saving him. Thanks to him, not only the children, but all of them remained safe and sound. Jake didn't know how to repay his kindness. The update has been completed. The NPC class Jake, Logan, Sophia, Henry, and Helen have been changed to free people. Above each of them was their level and status. All of them were level 1 except Jake, who had reached a higher level than the others. The status of a village also appeared. Its population was 5 people, resources 0%. As it turns out, these changes were made because of what just happened. They resisted, so Aiden separated them from the system. However, literally right there, something, as if waiting, intervened. The guy noticed something was wrong. It wasn't like anything else that was inside the system. When he saw this, he immediately felt that this was the source of the problem. He made a very sharp attacking lunge forward towards the problem. Using his weapon, he managed to strike, after which the so-called bug exploded. Its particles hovered in zero gravity around people who were cut off from the system. Threads burst from their bodies and they rushed towards Aiden. The guy didn't know why, but he ended up connecting with these people. But what he was sure of was that by becoming free people, they had escaped the current system and were no longer NPCs. Sir Jake apologized for asking and asked Aiden if he was the cameraman. The guy was very surprised and didn't understand why he came to such conclusions. Jake explained that he saved them through the system. Operators were the best players chosen by the moderators. However, Aiden was not an operator, so he could not find an explanation for the miracle that had occurred. In short, they were in his debt, so they asked to be allowed to join him. Aiden was very confused. He said that he was not the operator, and, moreover, they were practically strangers, but it was their own will. Besides, the guy was now the owner of this place, so their request was quite appropriate. What should I do now? Tell them he's a moderator? Arya called out to him from behind his shoulder. She told him not to forget that he was the one who changed their fates. And it doesn't matter what decision he makes, they will agree with anyone. So she told him not to rack his brains and to do what he thought was right. After all, their fates were already predetermined. Aiden felt like sometimes Arya spoke as if she knew everything. He simultaneously understood and did not understand her. However, the guy decided to act on his own accord. To begin with, he decided to give them what they needed most. A variety of very appetizing meats appeared on the plates in front of them. Everyone stood and waited impatiently for the meal to begin. It had been so long since they had eaten normal food, and Henry and Helen needed to eat more for their growing bodies. Aiden and Jake stood near the wall, away from everyone. Mr. Jake thanked them for sharing their supplies with them. By the way, he was already starting to worry about the children because they did not have enough food. The children gobbled up all sorts of delicious things. Now this amount it will last for a long time. The guy asked how long they had been here in this state. The red-headed man said that this village was originally a good place to live. Although not very rich but handsome, many players also looked here. This continued until, as a result of an inspection, the village was cleared out. Aiden remembered how they were helped by an unknown wanderer who did not remove them but saved them with his mystical power and disappeared. After that, to survive being imprisoned here, they all tried their best. Together, fighting for life, they eventually became close and almost family. Aiden reminisced about his family and spending time with his sister. Arya observed this dialogue from the second-floor balcony. Suddenly, she noticed a large chest standing near them. The girl was already planning something and apparently had her eye on it. When she got down, she asked what kind of chest it was. It looked too decent to be in such a remote place. It was a unified storage that could only be used by players, as it was linked to the system and could be located anywhere. This man used to be a guard at the vault, but after the place became abandoned, the chest cannot be opened. Perhaps the system does not allow this due to the location. Aiden asked to step aside. He heard that players were collecting various rare items, and maybe he could open the chest using his moderator powers. He managed to open the chest and the update was unlocked. There was light coming from inside, and Aiden was very surprised by what was inside. The chest contained various weapons, armor, food, clothing, and potions, and he had access to all of them. Everyone stood in shock and looked around at what was in the inventory. Aiden held a hammer in his hand as before he was sharpening it. He made not only a strong weapon for himself, but for everyone else. The boys couldn't believe that they could take such amazing swords. And Aiden also improved them. The children and the girl doctor were given decorations that added a level of dexterity to them. These items were very valuable, but what if the sharpening failed? Aiden reassured them and told them not to worry, because they had more than enough resources. He also said that this was just a gift for them. After awakening, the guy had the ability to ignore the system's rules. Whether the sharpening would be successful was up to him, and if so, then the resources would not be wasted. This money and bags of food will be enough for them for a long time so that they do not have to worry about anything. Now, in the status of the village, resources have increased from 0% to 150. Aiden glanced at Arya, who was asking with cat eyes where her weapon was. The guy replied that she already had plenty of good equipment, which left the girl rather disappointed. From the common storage, he was able to obtain many things. Food and money were now in abundance. The new equipment became extremely powerful. It was all player property, but he didn't care. The vault was part of the system, and players were probably compensated for items lost due to a system crash. And the most important thing could be called this prey of his. This was a new ability, the cloud system. It was a space from which any item or equipment could be retrieved when needed. Anything could be stored in it. While Aiden was examining the items that had emerged from the chest, he decided to put his hand inside the vault to see if there was anything left. But suddenly he felt something. And this something scared him very much. Number 000002, Aiden began to synchronize with the system. With all his strength, he tried to pull his hand out of the chest, but he could not do it. The synchronization was almost complete. In his hands, he held the very ability. With great difficulty, he managed to pull his hand out, and he fell on his back. The chest had lost its space, and now its bottom was visible. His hand had become something like a robot, something that was hard to imagine. Now he could use the shared storage at any time and in any place. In the future, this would be very useful to him. Aiden was called out by Master Jake and thanked for saving them, providing them with valuable resources and food. Even if the guy had just freed them, they couldn't have asked for more. Now they were asking for a task. They could do anything he asked to somehow thank him. They were no longer NPCs. They no longer had to follow orders, and besides, it was time for Aiden to leave. People began to worry that perhaps they didn't like their village, but that wasn't the case. He just had important things to do. He needed to get as far away from this place as possible because in a few days there might be a regular inspection. The moderator personally marked Aiden as a bug. If he lingered here, they could all be in danger because of him. So it was better for him to stay away from the village of Ursh. There was no point in making such sad faces because he was not leaving forever since he had no home. Now he will leave them, but he will definitely return soon. But for now, this village had to take care of itself. Then they shouted that they would really look forward to seeing him again. Arya wondered why the boy had decided to leave Ursh in such a hurry, when they could have stayed there for a couple more days. Perhaps there was a reason why they left now. Aiden thought to himself that he just needed to be calm and come up with some satisfactory answer. The girl knew without him that a regular check would take place in a few days. Before that happened, Aiden wanted to level up. Wasn't that obvious to the player? Arya asked him what he meant because he wasn't a player. The guy was stunned. He didn't expect such an answer. Arya noticed that this was a rather curious reaction. Did he really think he looked like a player all this time? It made her laugh so much that she clutched her stomach. Otherwise, why would she follow him? If he were just a player, she wouldn't be interested in the guy. He asked how long she had known he was not a player. The girl thought for a couple of minutes. She knew about it ever since she saw Aiden in the cleared village. He sighed heavily. He felt deceived. Her words meant that she knew about it from the beginning. She promised to help him in any way she could and to make sure that no one deleted him, not even the moderators and operators. After these words, Arya approached the guy. She looked him straight in the eyes and repeated what she had said. Suddenly, a warning appeared that an emergency check had begun. The system asked to get ready, and the countdown began from 15. Arya called the guy because she didn't understand what was happening to him. Why did the check start so suddenly? What was more frightening was that it wasn't a regular check, as usual, but an emergency one. He didn't understand what started it, but the countdown was about to end. The girl asked him what was wrong because he was a bit twitchy. He told her that the inspection was about to begin. Arya was surprised that he could even know such things. Aiden urgently needed to understand what the players were doing in such a situation. The girl said that they had to calm down first, but they didn't have time. There was 1 second left. There was a terrifying stain in the sky, which was spreading more and more. In a moment, everything around became dark and the emergency check began. The guy's body began to evaporate piece by piece, and he himself rose up and began to float in the air. Arya looked at the poor guy without any ceremony, who didn't understand what was happening to him and how to get out. His face looked quite scared. She told him to calm down and not to worry, but just wait. Suddenly he evaporated completely and only a glowing trace remained in the sky. He fell and landed in some unknown place. He screamed loudly in pain. Having come to his senses and raised himself up, the guy began to examine the place in which he found himself. Looking around, he saw only a multitude of players. Everyone had broken up into small groups and were calmly discussing something. He received a new announcement that he had entered the neutral zone and had to wait here until the inspection was completed. Previously, he had always wondered where the players went during this time. It was the first time Aiden had seen so many players in one place. Perhaps he should go down the hill to them and try to find out some information. Arya asked him to wait, but he didn't know when she would arrive. He thought it wouldn't hurt to just ask. The guy walked between groups of people who did nothing but laugh. He saw incredibly strong players in strong armor and beautiful clothes. Aiden thought he had become strong, but compared to other top players, he was nothing. 2 players were talking to each other. One was complaining that this zone was boring as hell. He needed to make content, but there was nothing here. They were all level 200 and 300. The guy still had something to strive for. He needed to find Arya. He had a lot of questions for her. As he passed by, he heard 2 guys talking. One of them said that the inspection would soon be over, and the other asked what would happen next. Apparently, he didn't know. After one inspection was over, another one followed. While the search for the girl continued, Aiden listened to the conversations of other players. Mostly everyone was talking about how you can die of boredom here, and there were also complaints about constant checks. Aiden should have stayed out of it. At that moment, he accidentally hit another player's armor with his shoulder. The guy was already prepared for the fact that he was about to get into trouble. The man turned around and grabbed Aiden by his clothes with bad intentions, cursing at him and threatening him. It's not worth drawing attention to yourself. If everything takes a serious character, then only he will be in trouble. Thank God, the guy already knew such idiots as him. If you do not react to his numerous blows, then soon the man's anger will subside. Suddenly a hand stopped the blow. Another player came up to them and said that he was sure that the guy had hit him by accident and that they shouldn't be so rude to newcomers. It was a tall, brown-eyed, blond man in beautiful armor. He asked if he even thought with his own head. The man asked who he was. If he wasn't planning on getting punched in the face, then... Before he could finish his sentence, he noticed something. The guy had a drawing of a decanter on his armor, which was located on his shoulder. The other guys noticed this conflict and were discussing the pattern. Apparently that guy was from the Griffin Guild. There are 5 main guilds that have the largest number of rankers and high-level players, with the Griffin Guild being the most popular of them. The man was clearly in trouble, but this will teach him a lesson. Fearing, he decided to leave quickly, but said that Aiden was just lucky. If the guy from the Griffin Guild gets his hands on this man again, he'll tear him to pieces. Aiden thanked his protector and said that it was better to avoid people like him. But overall, he was pleased to meet me and extended his hand for a handshake. The guy introduced himself as Kevin. Aiden introduced himself as well. Kevin laughed and asked if he was new. Those idiots only picked on those weaker than them, and if he hadn't intervened, the man would have continued to get on his nerves. Since they had already met, the player offered to join his guild Griffin after checking. Aiden replied that there was no point in that since he was weak enough that he would hardly be of any use. Kevin reassured him and said that frankly he didn't have a specific goal. After the updates stopped coming out, new players started appearing much less often. Therefore, some guilds and experienced players began to voluntarily help newcomers and invite them to teams. And Kevin followed their example. Everything was voluntary and no one forced anyone. By the way, the friend request had already been sent. By joining the guild, you could get a bunch of different privileges. Kevin said that it was time for him to go, and if there were any questions, then let Aiden contact him. They were always happy to have newcomers. Aiden used to think that all players were basically bad, remembering those two who once beat up a guy for a bad sharpening. But it turns out that not all people are like that. While he was thinking about this, someone managed to sneak up from behind. It was Arya. She jumped out from behind and startled Aiden. The girl had her own methods of finding a guy, and by the way, she brought a small gift with her. It was the same guy Aiden had crashed into. Arya was a little late to deal with him. The man was covered in bruises and marks from blows. The guy wanted to remind her that her karma would be lowered for such antics, but he realized that it was useless. Leaving the man lying on the ground, they walked on. The girl asked about his first impression of the place and added that there was nothing special here. Aiden replied that it was not so bad. An unknown man was watching them from the hill. It was the operator of the Lloyd system, along with his assistants, the X-ray technicians. From his look, it was clear that he was not pleased with Aiden's presence. 3 individuals stood near the raised columns. One of them asked why there were so few of them today. One of them was the system operator Mia, with a level of 490. She was indignant about why Lloyd had acted without even consulting them, and why he had suddenly decided to conduct an inspection and where he was at that moment. Someone grabbed her by the shoulder and asked her not to be so angry. The person was a level 400 operator named Selena. She looked like an angel who had descended from heaven with huge white wings. The girl reassured Mia, saying that Lloyd wouldn't do something like that without a reason and would probably contact them soon. The third operator, Zenon, level 445, said that Lloyd had just messaged him. The message said that he had found a bug. He figured it wouldn't take Lloyd long to remove it. Selena said it was very interesting, and Mia, still indignant, warned that she also had her own things to do and Lloyd should hurry up. Zenon suggested watching what was happening at the last operator. Through a special window, the 3 watched what was happening with the help of one of the scanners, and everyone was wondering what kind of bug it was. A new announcement came in which said that the emergency check was over. Players were discussing it and were surprised that this time everything went so quickly. The news did not write anything about new events, only about a bug fix. The player standing near Arya and Aiden said that he was no longer expecting any updates. Arya wondered why the test had suddenly ended prematurely, since this usually didn't happen. She had a bad feeling about this. The girl looked down at the crowd of players and suddenly realized that they were under the control of the system. Someone had used special powers. Something was wrong here. She grabbed Aiden by the shoulder and told him about her bad feelings and the chance that someone would come here to remove him. Arya calmed him down and promised that she would definitely think of something. This scared the guy a lot. He was in complete shock. The girl's last words before teleportation were that she really needed him. The next moment, there was a flash and all the players were able to teleport except Aiden. He covered his eyes with his hand from the bright light. When the teleportation ended, he realized that he was left completely alone in this space. In shock, looking at all this, he did not understand what was happening and why he was left alone. After teleportation, the girl found herself in some kind of forest. A powerful flow of energy began to emanate from her, which had already manifested itself earlier in the village. Arya said that someone had crossed all boundaries and dared to do such antics in her presence. The guy stood in place, and inside he was consumed by thoughts about what if he disappeared now. He forced himself not to panic because he knew this day would come someday and he was preparing for it. Suddenly he heard footsteps behind him and turned around. He wasn't going to just let himself be deleted like that. The operator of the Lloyd system was approaching him, and behind him were the mythical creatures that had previously attacked his city. The operator couldn't figure out whether Aiden was an NPC or a player. It was the first time he'd seen such a bug, but either way, the guy was a threat to the system. Therefore, he had to be removed. At that moment, the creature pounced on him, trying to grab him with its huge hand. Somehow the guy managed to dodge. Using one of his abilities, he pulled out a sword from his inventory. The monster grabbed the blade of the sword, and Aiden had a hard time resisting. Suddenly, a laser burst out of the monster's eyes, but the guy, as always, was lucky. While he was dodging, he managed to land a blow to the monster's face and cut it in half. He had barely managed to defend himself from one creature when at that very moment, a second one, larger and stronger, pounced on him. It stepped on the guy who was trying his best to defend himself with a shield. Now he no longer looked like an ordinary person. People do not have such strength, and his eyes glowed bright red. Suddenly, an update message appeared and his characteristics were doubled. After this, the huge monster flew to the side as if it were 5 times smaller than it actually was. But suddenly something grabbed him and tied him up as if they were strong ropes. Looking to the side, he saw the creature, who had already come to his senses, grab the guy with one hand and then throw him into the wall with great force. From the blow, Aiden began to cough up blood and groan in pain. The monster swung its arm a second time to strike again. At this point, a message came about unlocking a new update. The monster was already preparing to throw the guy into the wall, but it was not to be. Aiden, somehow miraculously escaping his grasp, suddenly attacked from behind, seeking to deliver the finishing blow. His strength tripled, and he managed to defeat the second creature, breaking its body into small pieces. The monster flew to the side, rolling along the ground with a screeching and crashing sound. The guy delivered another powerful blow from above, which split the monster's body into two parts. After such a fight, the monster should have been defeated. This fight was extremely difficult, and he stopped to rest. Lloyd came up behind him and said he was extremely disappointed. He had expected Aiden to be a high-level bug since he managed to destroy the dungeon guardian, but from the looks of it, it wasn't worth his time to even come here. Turning around, the operator grabbed the guy by the head, forcibly closing his mouth. Now he became a non-entity to him, and the operator even had to conduct an inspection. Lloyd activated his unique ability, which allowed him to temporarily gain access to moderator powers to delete an object. The removal process began, and Aiden was left hanging in the air, unable to move. The guy was amazed that Lloyd called it a deletion. Compared to what the moderator had used on the day they tried to wipe him off the face of the earth for the first time, this didn't even seem serious. A powerful stream of energy began to emanate from him out of anger and a sense of injustice. Lloyd was stunned to see the power coming from Aiden, who somehow managed to reflect his ability. The system returned the message, "Moderator permission collision error. Available moderator permissions are too low to delete this object." The operator was speechless, looking at what was happening. Other operators continued to observe the situation. One of them, Selena, did not hide her surprise and said that she had never heard of a bug having moderator powers. Lloyd tried to determine information about the status, level, or nature of the threat posed by Aiden, but to no avail. None of his instruments could retrieve the data. He couldn't believe that this guy was stronger than the cameraman. There was only one question spinning in his head. Who is he? The situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. Aiden managed to resist the deletion, but it took too much energy. Destroying the guardians of the system exhausted him. Although he was not physically hurt, he was not ready to defeat Lloyd now. The operator understood this. He knew that if he let Aiden go now, the consequences for the system could be catastrophic. Moreover, it was impossible to allow the moderator to find out about this incident. Realizing all this, Lloyd made a decision to stop Aiden here and now at any cost. Selena, who was still watching him, quietly said that it seemed that Lloyd was determined not to retreat. Zeno, who was standing nearby, confirmed his intentions. It was the first time they had seen Lloyd in his executioner guise. It was obvious that he was not going to back down. The operator was preparing for the final blow. The guy raised his head, thinking that all the horror was already behind him, but he was wrong. Lloyd had changed his appearance. He looked much more intimidating now. Heavy armor, gleaming weapons, and there was a sense of power around him that had not been there before. He clearly intended to end this fight once and for all. The operator prepared to deliver a crushing blow, but Aiden activated his ability in time. The ground shook as if something unimaginably powerful had been awakened beneath its surface. Rocks rose into the air, cracks spread in all directions. Suddenly, a huge canyon formed in front of them, wide and deep, stretching for kilometers into the distance. Aiden miraculously managed to stop Lloyd's blow. At that moment, he realized how lucky he was, because the slightest mistake could have been fatal for him. The operator quickly realized what had happened. Aiden had somehow managed to absorb his powerful blow with his ability. Lloyd approached the guy and, holding his sword to his throat, calmly asked where he got his powers as a moderator. His voice was icy, his gaze frighteningly calm. Aiden's answer was crucial, not only his life, but also the form of punishment that Lloyd might inflict. However, instead of meekly submitting, Aiden exclaimed to stop talking nonsense. He was going to delete it anyway. The guy looked Lloyd in the eyes and added defiantly that since he was so curious, he would find out for himself now. At that moment, a huge portal began to grow behind him. Its energy spilled around, intensifying the already tense atmosphere. Aiden knew that his current powers were not working on the operators, but that was only temporary. He felt that soon the situation would change, and this would be a completely different fight. The boy, exhausted but determined, promised that when his training was complete, he would find Lloyd himself and finish him off. Lloyd, not wanting to let him go, desperately tried to stop the teleportation by plunging his sword into the portal space. However, his efforts were in vain. The portal closed, leaving the operator furious. Lloyd couldn't understand how this could have happened. It was impossible to leave this zone without his permission, but Aiden had broken all the rules. The operator was sure of one thing. The guy had to be found and destroyed to prevent further chaos. Meanwhile, in another part of the world, several players were at a chest that was dropping rare items. One of them was discussing the issue of items disappearing, while the other confirmed that he had encountered this bug before. While they were arguing, a hand suddenly appeared from the chest. The sight frightened them so much that they jumped away from it. Aiden began to emerge from the vault. Players were shocked that a person had emerged from the chest. No one could explain how this was possible. The broken system caused even more discontent among players, who continued to complain about its poor performance. After climbing out of the chest, the boy collapsed on the floor. He was on the verge of exhaustion, but in his soul he felt relief that he had managed to survive. His body was no longer obeying him, but he knew that the most important thing now was to regain his strength. At this time, the operators were talking about the current situation. Zeno suggested a council meeting to discuss how to deal with the threat, but Lloyd refused to return. He was convinced that he must hunt down and destroy Aiden immediately. Lloyd began collecting data analysis to send to other moderators for evaluation. He saw Aiden as a threat that needed to be eliminated at all costs. To him, this wasn't just a bug, but a catastrophe that could change the entire system. Mia announced that she was leaving, as she had neither the time nor the inclination to listen to such talk. Selena believed that everyone should work together to prepare measures, but for her it was a waste of time. Her head was already overloaded with the storage issues, and there were too many unresolved issues. After asking Lloyd if he had any objections and hearing a negative answer, she said goodbye and headed for the exit. As Mia walked down the long corridor, she thought that this was another headache that had been added to her endless worries. Her sensitive ears picked up a presence nearby. Turning her head, she noticed a figure leaning against one of the columns. It was Arya, who seemed to be looking for answers to her questions as well. Their gazes met. The blue-haired girl, smiling slightly, noted that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Meanwhile, the bright sun was shining over the city of Mikain. Its rays penetrated the windows of houses, raising the spirits of the townspeople. The central square, where life was always in full swing, was crowded with people today. However, in one of the dark alleys, which passers-by usually ignored, stood Aiden. He looked closely at his friends list, and anxiety did not leave him. He noticed that Arya still had not answered him. In his soul, worries arose that perhaps something had happened to her. A bead of sweat slowly trickled down his forehead. Aiden was nervous, knowing that there was no more time to wait here. He was sure that the operator would not stop and would pursue him to the end. Although he managed to escape using the cloud to move, he had no idea how much longer he could fool the system. It was too dangerous to stay in one place, so he needed to find shelter quickly. Putting on the hood of a long cape, he disappeared into the darkness of the alley. Aiden had been to the area many times before, but he couldn't get used to its dreary atmosphere. The narrow streets were filled with trash, and among them sat homeless people who had nothing but tattered clothes and empty eyes. The last time he was here was with Ellis when they tried to escape together. Suddenly, a drone with an X-ray scanner flew past him looking for bugs. Aiden managed to hide behind the wall in time. His guesses were correct. The system launched surveillance. The guy started to wonder if there was a place where even the cameramen couldn't find him. It seemed unlikely, but the thought kept spinning in his head that such a corner might still exist. Suddenly, he noticed bright little beams that seemed to show him the way. He had seen them once before, and they always attracted his attention. Deciding that this was a sign, Aiden moved forward, following the light through narrow and dark streets. Finally, the rays led him to a high wall. Aiden stopped and raised his head. Above, at the very top of the wall, those same bright lights were gathering. He couldn't understand why they were leading him here. There was nothing here, at first glance. Or maybe this was a hidden passage. Hesitantly touching the wall, he suddenly saw purple energy spreading across its surface. The boy jerked his hand away in surprise, but the energy continued to grow, covering the wall with glowing patterns. It seemed that this really was a secret passage, but what could be hidden behind it? Aiden looked closely at the wall, feeling curiosity mixed with caution growing inside him. Aiden, with his powers as a moderator, could go anywhere. He reached out to the door and used his power to open it. The wall swung open like a gate. Suddenly, a warning appeared that this zone is not recommended for visiting, as it is outside the system's protection. The guy thought it was a joke because the system seemed to be only dreaming of getting rid of him. A simple warning would not stop him. He was sure that it was much safer there than here, where he risked being seen by the operator. With these words, he went inside. The teleportation ended, and around him appeared mountains of rocks and debris. This place did not resemble either a dungeon or an ordinary city. He thought it was strange to see something like this near the city, but decided to look around first. A girl came out from behind the wall. She looked exhausted and unkempt. As soon as she noticed him, she got scared and started running. Aiden called out to her, asking her to wait and listen, but she didn't stop. He ran after her and soon found himself in a huge hall. There was a fire burning, tents were pitched, and people like her were walking around. When they entered, everyone turned their attention to them. People looked at the guy with horror. There were many NPCs gathered in the hall. Suddenly, a pile of stones rushed towards the guy. He managed to put up an iron glove, protecting himself. The girl who had sent these stones sternly asked him who he was and how he had gotten there. She attacked without waiting for an answer, but she couldn't be allowed to use a spell on him, and he took a sword from the storage room to protect himself. With its help, he was able to repel her attack. She took the guy for a gambler and warned him not to expect mercy. The girl concentrated all her energy on lifting a huge number of stones. Other people offered to help this girl and called her by the name Siri. Siri calmed them down and asked them not to get involved in the fight because they would only get in the way. Aiden realized that all these people were marked Bug. He asked to stop and said that there was some misunderstanding. People did not believe him and thought that he was just messing with their heads and were afraid that he came to delete them all. NPCs ordered Siri to destroy the guy. The girl explained that this location was created by Mr. Sirius. He claimed that no one except the moderator could get here. However, since the guy managed to find this place, he should not count on getting out of here alive. Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice ordered them to stop. It was the voice of Sirius, who declared that Aiden was not an enemy and ordered them to bring him to him. Siri complied and began to carry out the task. She told the guy to follow her, not hiding her distrust. Internally prepared for any provocation, the girl made it clear that she would watch his every step and immediately stop any attempt to disturb the order. As they walked through the twisting corridors, Aiden wondered how these people had managed to avoid being deleted during the inspection. The answer came naturally. They had been saved by Sirius, who had created this place specifically for their protection. Without his intervention, they would have been destroyed long ago. A passage appeared at the top of the rubble mountains. This meant that they had arrived. Siri announced her arrival and that she had brought an uninvited guest. Sirius appeared before Aiden, and his appearance literally stunned the boy. A huge dragon with horns, massive wings, and mesmerizing eyes froze in front of him. His presence was majestic and frightening at the same time. The dragon greeted Aiden as a moderator, and these words left the guy speechless for a moment. He couldn't believe that dragons existed in this world. Sirius was a patron spirit, but he was not a simple NPC. He was a dragon from the time of the creation of this world, and Aiden had heard of him only in legends. Sirius realized that this guy was the new moderator, the one who saw fragments of his memories, and the dragon's heart managed to fill with joy. Sirius was able to see thoughts thanks to his personal ability called Eye of the Dragon. This ability allows him to see the true nature of an object. He could not think that a creature like Aiden appeared in a world where everything literally stopped. It should be noted that the new moderator has a unique ability to cure the bug. Siri was stunned and asked again as she was not sure of what she had heard. Finally, Mr. Sirius met the man of destiny. At that moment, something magical happened. A bright flash of light emanated from the dragon. He suddenly transformed into a man with blue hair with red tips, dressed in magnificent gilded clothes. Sirius turned to the moderator and asked if he could fulfill one request. Siri saw the gentleman in such a form for the first time and could not believe her eyes. At that moment, Aiden received a message about the addition of a new quest. It said that it was necessary to protect the NPCs who followed Sirius and fulfill his request. The reward for the quest remained unknown. Siri was concerned that the master's mana was unstable and perhaps it was not worth wasting it on shape-shifting, but the man assured her that everything was fine. This quest was very different from the ones the guy had done before. He probably should have listened to everyone first and then decided what to do next. A large crowd of NPCs had already gathered near the entrance to the hall. Siri tried to disperse them, explaining that they were having an important conversation. Aiden turned to Mr. Sirius and asked what exactly he wanted to ask him. Everything turned out to be extremely simple. Sirius wanted Aiden to heal people and take them to his village. All these people were marked as bugs. The man helped them escape during the system check and protected them all this time, but now he could not help anymore. Sirius admitted that he could no longer suppress the virus that was spreading through his body, posing a high threat. He pulled back part of his kimono, showing how the virus had burst out of his heart and was spreading. The man understood that even a person with abilities like Aiden's would have a hard time fixing such a bug. He himself had failed. So that those around him would not suffer, Sirius asked Aiden to save these people. As a token of gratitude, he was ready to give up his star, since he had nothing more to offer. Siri, having overheard the conversation behind the wall, burst into the room begging Sirius not to do it, but he could offer nothing more as a reward. Aiden, not needing a star, still agreed to fix the bug, since it turned out to be not such a difficult task for him. He decided to destroy everything that posed a threat, be it a bug or the system itself. The quest was accepted. The owner of the place and Aiden stood on the dais while people gathered around, stunned by what was happening. They couldn't believe that any of this was true. Siri wasn't sure either, but there was nothing to do but wait. The girl was sure that Mr. Sirius never made a mistake in his choice. Aiden stood in the middle of the energy ring created by the man. After the transfer, he found himself in the same internal space of the system. There were many people floating around him. There were about 40 or 50 of them. Aiden methodically freed people from the system's control. However, after this, only the dragon remained, and the situation with it was more tense. The dragon was badly damaged, its condition was critical. In addition, the bug it was infected with was much more powerful than all the others. If Aiden left things as they were, it could lead to serious consequences. Realizing this, he decisively struck the sword at the source of the problem. The bug's limbs began to reach out to him, trying to devour him. But he was filled with rage. How could some insignificant bug dare to oppose him? Gathering all his power, Aiden released the energy. Its force caused an explosion that tore apart space. All his hatred and determination was embodied in one command for the virus to disappear. In the real world, this caused a colossal explosion. Everything happened exactly as Siri predicted. When the dust settled, people noticed that Sirius had fallen to the floor and was coughing non-stop. Worried, they rushed towards him. Siri looked over the Lord's body and was surprised to notice that where the bug's traces had been, there was now nothing left. Returning, Aiden looked at the people with a slight smile and declared that he had fulfilled his promise. He had destroyed everything that posed a threat. Now no one will be able to delete them because of the bug. At the same moment, a message came that the system update was complete. The NPC class of over 50 people changed to free people. Joy engulfed everyone around them. Now they no longer had to be afraid. No one would dare to remove them from this world. Sirius, coming closer, thanked Aiden. He admitted that he had not even counted on such a result, and assured that they would never forget his mercy. But suddenly a terrifying figure appeared behind Aiden, something resembling a man with horns. It spoke in a cold, ominous voice, asking what this all meant. The figure reproached Aiden that if he had waited just a little bit, a perfect chess piece would have been born. The creature could not believe that the boy had destroyed in an instant what it had worked on for so long. Multiple warnings about danger began to appear in the system. Aiden's abilities were severely limited and some commands stopped functioning. The monster turned out to be a virus which asked with menace and curiosity who Aiden really was. After these words, the system paused its work, hanging in silence. Seeing the virus, Mr. Sirius was horrified. He did not expect to encounter again the one he had once managed to destroy. The virus seemed to be getting stronger, a little more, and it would infect everything around as it had already happened to the place where Sirius used to live. Everything indicated that he was not completely defeated. His existence threatened everything around him. There was no point in aggression towards him because those who tried to delete them were moderators and crazy operators. Now the virus didn't care about Sirius. Its attention switched to Aiden, who turned out to be a much more interesting specimen for it. Heading towards him, he focused his energy and infected the guy, leaving no chance for resistance. Sirius tried to stop the virus, desperately getting its attention, but it was too late. The virus was not going to change its plans and continued to act, completely ignoring those around it. There was a massive explosion, and Aiden was completely consumed by the bug. The system stopped working, and the firewall that had previously separated this place from the outside world disappeared. The virus had complete freedom of action. Now it did not need to waste energy on complex manipulations as it had before. This place was hidden from the eyes of the moderators, which made it safe for the virus. It was going to destroy everyone present, leaving only emptiness from them. Suddenly he noticed that Aiden was emitting energy similar to his own. It looked like the boy was trying to resist the infection. Aiden knew the situation was becoming critical and he needed to get out immediately. He tried to unlock the update, but the system gave an error, indicating that it was unstable. It looked like there was no way out. The virus, watching his actions, did not understand what exactly the guy was planning to do, but he was sure that resistance was useless. The firewall was gone, and no force could help Aiden anymore. The virus had swallowed him completely, depriving him of his last chance for salvation. Aiden found himself inside the bug. The place was like an endless vortex that was sucking him in deeper and deeper. Emptiness surrounded him, and he had almost no strength left to fight. Suddenly, a faint beam of light appeared in the distance. Aiden began to fall rapidly downwards, approaching it. A warm, small hand suddenly touched his face. The image of a little girl appeared before him. It was his little sister Ellis, whom he missed so much. Suddenly, the virus noticed how numerous cracks began to appear along the walls of the cocoon. Aiden's energy burst out of them. The walls that absorbed the guy split under the pressure of the force. Aiden initiated the creation of a new system by activating the update command with the delete function. All concentrated energy was directed towards the complete destruction of the virus. This came as a shock to the virus. Only the operator could have such powers to delete. Who was this guy, really? Using his passive ability, Firewall, which created a moderator-level defense, Aiden blocked the viral force that was trying to consume him. Thanks to this ability, he was able to protect not only himself but also all the inhabitants of the zone and the village of Ursh. Aiden was sure that the virus had no chance now. However, the virus only laughed. Now everything became clear. Aiden was exactly the one the virus was looking for all this time. He became the virus's path to the moderators. Dissolving into thin air, the virus promised that it would definitely make Aiden its own, hinting at a future meeting. Finally, it completely disappeared, leaving them alone. Sirius hurried to Aiden and asked if everything was okay. He assured him that the danger had passed and everything was now under control. Sirius was amazed. He didn't even suspect that Aiden was capable of using such a powerful ability as removal. It was an incredible help that saved everyone again. Without the support of the system, the owner of this place was completely powerless. He felt awkward calling himself a patron spirit because even at a critical moment, he could only stand aside. But that wasn't the end. Sirius knew he had to deal with the remains of the bug space. If they were left untouched, the virus could return. Gathering all his remaining strength, he prepared to destroy the remnants, completely eliminating the threat. From the remains of the bug space, giant needles suddenly grew and mercilessly pierced Mr. Sirius through and through. Siri and Aiden watched in horror, the girl desperately calling out to him, hoping he was still alive. Suddenly, the virus rose from the ashes, using its unique ability to multiply and clone. Aiden instantly pulled the sword out of the storage and cut the needles that held Sirius. The gentleman's body fell to the floor unconscious, and Siri, running up to him, begged him to open his eyes. Aiden couldn't understand why the virus still existed even though it had been removed. His guesses were confirmed. The virus had experience in fighting deletion. This creature had encountered something similar more than once. Only a moderator could get rid of it completely. The guy used the removal ability again and again, but the virus still returned. It seemed like Aiden had enough authority to use the removal as much as he wanted, but it still wasn't enough. He took out a shield, trying to defend himself from the virus's attacks, but it easily penetrated his defense. The virus's energy penetrated the sword, destroying it completely. It was familiar. Something similar had happened in the battle with the operator. It turned out that the player's equipment was useless against such an entity as a virus. Sharpening and efforts put into weapons lost all meaning. The virus, possessing incredible power, continued to play with Aiden. Most of his equipment was destroyed. The virus mockingly suggested that the guy give up since his attacks and removals were nothing to him. He just kept cloning himself, becoming stronger and stronger. Aiden couldn't understand why the virus was so powerful. The virus's curiosity grew into a desire to swallow the guy whole. The firewall that protected Aiden irritated the virus, but it decided to destroy it along with the guy. Aiden tried his best to defend himself with his energy, but it was all in vain. The power of removal could not compare to the power of expansion that belonged to the bug. Realizing that resistance was futile, Aiden was ready to accept his fate and close his eyes so that it would all end. At this point, Mr. Sirius finally came to his senses. The girl asked him to hold on a little longer. She wanted to try to heal Sirius somehow with her magic so that he could get up and help again. Sirius assured her that everything was fine, although they both knew that magic couldn't cure this. They had a firewall, but he was careless. Now that his body had gone beyond the bug level, he might soon become a virus. It was no longer safe to stay near him. Siri couldn't hold back her tears. It wasn't fair. They had just found a way to save themselves, and now everything was falling apart. The man apologized to her and asked her to help the new moderator. This was the only way everyone should follow. Meanwhile, the virus continued to consume Aiden, and it became increasingly difficult to resist. He frantically searched for a way out, realizing that any decision, even the most insignificant, could save him. Suddenly, his fingers found something in his back pocket, Ellis's hammer, which he had used to improve the sharpening level earlier. Why didn't it collapse like all the other equipment? This sledgehammer could be affected by the delete command. Aiden didn't hesitate. He struck with colossal force. The virus clearly did not expect this. It was impossible. Only those who had received permission from the moderator could have a weapon of subjugation. The command worked. It turned out that this hammer really did have such a function. Aiden was lucky. The virus was inattentive. However, even with this advantage, it remained weak. It was still impossible to completely stop the enemy. Suddenly, a sign appeared in front of him. It announced the completion of the quest and the assignment of a reward. He received the Star of Sirius. Siri called him and asked him to use her. Aiden struck the star and it shattered into small pieces. The virus was getting worse. He had never encountered such a weapon before. Ellis' hammer transformed into a huge burning blade, Auden's punishing sword. Now the virus could not use either the powers of expansion or cloning. How is this possible? Only moderators. And Mr. Trojan had such abilities. It was time to stop. The games were over. The virus was going to take Aiden unharmed, but he refused to meekly accept his fate. The virus, gathering all its energy, directed a destructive stream at Aiden, ordering him to reap the fruits of his stubbornness. The guy was prepared for this development of events and, fortunately, was able to block this powerful blow. The virus screamed in pain. It did not expect to be defeated. Everything above the ground was lifted into the air by the powerful explosion. Aiden breathed a sigh of relief. He had finally managed to win. Looking up, he saw a new canyon that had formed as a result of the battle. Somewhere far away in a room with virus walls stood an unknown man. He noticed that one of his copies was missing. It could have been removed by either the operator or a high-ranking defender. Who exactly was it? He pressed his finger on a random spot on the wall and opened a window that broadcast Aiden's battle with the bug. The man was surprised. This specimen really was quite interesting. If you do it right, you can even hit the moderator, and Mr. Trojan will probably be pleased. This man turned out to be a worm, a virus with special powers. Suddenly there was a loud explosion, engulfing everything around in flames. The worm began to burn little by little, but it didn't seem to bother him at all. An unknown, uninvited guest emerged through the flames. This person turned out to be Mia. The man noted that they had not seen each other for a long time. Finally, she found him, how well he hid from the system all this time. At that very second, she made a dash forward, leaving behind a trail of fire. She was very lucky to find the worm, but how did she know that he was here? Mia didn't bring a moderator with her, but can she handle it alone? Has the girl underestimated her opponent too much? The girl silently looked at the worm with a serious gaze. The information turned out to be correct. He really was hiding in a bad sector. Why didn't she guess about it right away? This was a big oversight on her part as an operator, but she alone was more than enough. She was determined and prepared for battle. Each of her blows left behind explosions and deep craters in the ground. But suddenly she noticed that the worm was in a completely different direction from where she was aiming. Before she knew it, Mia was consumed by the virus powers. The worm merely remarked mockingly that she should have brought at least a high-ranking protector with her. Now she had to deal with the consequences of her overconfidence. A light flashed in the space where Mia was, causing a powerful explosion. Miraculously, she managed to escape by using her energy. The man was amazed. How did she manage to get out? Did she underestimate him? It was the worm who looked down on her. Mia promised that she would remove him at all costs. Meanwhile, Aiden, Siri, and the rest of the NPCs gathered around Mr. Sirius. The girl hugged him, as if for the last time. One of the man's eyes was enveloped in a devouring virus. Inside it sat a dragon, bound with many chains. Out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly noticed a man in the distance. He was filled with rage. This man was the moderator. Why was he interfering? The dragon couldn't understand why innocent people had to be removed. He couldn't believe that a moderator, who was supposed to protect them from threats, would so irresponsibly get rid of those who couldn't get protection and were infected. He was a being created to protect people, and the one who gave him this calling was the moderator himself. Why has he changed so much now and become like this? The moderator could no longer allow them to appear. He decided to permanently remove all his abilities related to the update. NPCs who opposed the system and he himself, Sirius, were considered a hidden threat. Therefore, the moderator made the final decision to block them. The dragon broke his chains and begged the moderator to come to his senses, but at this rate, he would become what they wanted him to be. Sirius couldn't do anything and was blocked. Much time has passed since then. Many houses were built around his fortress. His appearance had changed. His scales no longer shimmered as before, but time cannot be turned back, and such is the will of the system. Should he simply accept it? Suddenly someone touched his scales with a small hand. It turned out to be a human child, all alone. People had come before, but no one dared to get too close to him. Some even brought many different things, calling them offerings. Even players came, but they didn't pay much attention to the dragon. It seemed that this child had nowhere to go and no family of his own. The dragon offered to stay with him for a while. The girl really enjoyed spending time with the dragon, and he decided to give her the name Siri. Siri was different from the usual NPCs. She had an innate talent for magic, and Sirius taught her all the possible ways to defend herself. However, Siri was a human child, so he couldn't keep her with him forever. Before it was too late, the dragon returned her to the people, and fortunately she settled in well among them. Now he had no purpose, no former appearance, no strength. However, he was glad that he could protect this child. Until Sirius encountered a dangerous virus again, unpleasant energy. Certainly it was something he had encountered before. If the dragon delays, everything will be destroyed, as happened in the past. But this time he had to stop the virus at all costs. There was a warning that the system did not provide protection in this area. At the very top of the hill stood one of the worm clones trying to infect the entire city. But he failed again. The moderators and operators had already figured it out. It was necessary to get out of here quickly before the check began, otherwise the virus could be removed. Just as he was about to start teleporting, a mighty dragon rose up behind him. Turning around and seeing him, the virus realized that the dragon was to blame for everything. But it seems that luck was on his side. Sirius probably came to stop the infection, but alas, he was too late. In many places, the infection had already begun, and it would make a fine specimen. So the worm finally inserted the treasure and subjected the dragon to the strongest infection. Before the complete teleportation, the virus asked to take care of itself and try its best not to be deleted. At this point, an emergency check was initiated. A fatal error and bug were discovered. A moderator came to this city along with the system guards. This area and NPC had to be deleted. One of the guards was already about to deal damage. The dragon watched the city and couldn't believe that everything was happening again. The moderator still couldn't think of any other way than deleting. Sirius didn't want to leave people here and teleported everyone to another place. After all, he took an oath that he would protect them. When he was born, his mother told him that she wanted him to be a light for those who had lost their way. The brightest star. After that, she disappeared, and the little dragon was left all alone. The moderator was in his area and was monitoring a large number of screens. Portion was first on his list, and Sirius was next. He looked at his name intently as if remembering something. There's practically nothing left of the underground world. Aiden looked around and realized they were in a different place. He was pleasantly surprised to find Siri's ability incredibly useful. Thanks to her, they were able to get out, and the guy thanked her for this act. The place Aiden controlled was in that direction, and he pointed to a mountain with a glowing red mark. It was a walk from here. The girl approached the guy and thanked him because without his help, she and the other NPCs would not have survived. And also thanked for removing Mr. Sirius, otherwise he would have become a virus. She was sure that Sirius would not want such an outcome for himself. Moreover, he opened a new path for them. So as Sirius wanted, they will follow Master Aiden. Now Siri and 50 other people were registered as residents of the village of Erch. As they walked, Aiden wanted to ask what kind of star it was. To tell the truth, the girl herself didn't know for sure. She only knew that the star was the source of Sirius's power and that he guarded it with all his heart. He also said that there were other stars like it in the world. This meant that the guy wasn't imagining things. The moderator's powers, which had remained unchanged for a long time, expanded after the star's takeover. If it had been not Aiden who had consumed her, but that virus, something terrible would have happened. It looked like they were there. It needed major repairs, but only 5 people had lived there before them. Aiden was hailed by the villagers, who were happy to see him and were eagerly awaiting his return. The kids ran to hug the boy. Did they really know he was coming today? Mr. Jake said someone had beaten him to it. Suddenly, Arya jumped out from behind him and hugged him tightly. She knew he would come back here again. Aiden made her worry, so she said she would never let him go alone again. Arya was surprised that he brought so many people here and asked what happened. The guy replied that he would tell her a little later. Ciri noticed that the girl was radiating such great power, just like Mr. Sirius, although perhaps even more powerful. Aiden asked what Arya had been doing all this time since he couldn't get in touch with her. The girl, after a short pause, said to wait a little. At that very second, an explosion thundered behind him. It was caused by someone landing. The new villagers were in a panic. They did not understand who fell from the sky. Maybe it was a player? This guest turned out to be a cameraman named Mia. One of the men became nervous because he thought he needed to run away immediately, but the other man reminded them that they were no longer bugs now. Things were getting worse. As the hours went by, Aiden thought the operator had come with bad intentions, and if things went badly, he would be able to use his sledgehammer again. Mia, in tears, admitted that she was upset and apologized for losing the worm. She felt guilty and threw herself into Arya's arms, who reassured her by telling her that she had done a good job, patting her on the head. Aiden was surprised because he considered the operators a threat to himself and the villagers. Arya introduced Mia to Aiden, explaining that she was the system operator who could be trusted above all others. A lot of people had gathered in the hall near the doors, discussing something heatedly. Mia remembered that Aiden was the same NPC who had received the powers of administrator and operator, and next to him were people who had escaped from the existing system. Aiden was concerned about why Arya brought the cameraman here since Mia could have deleted them all. Mia was indignant and asked what the complaint was since it was their direct responsibility to protect the world by getting rid of bugs. But wasn't there any other way? Why did it have to be deleted? Gradually their dialogue turned into shouting. Did he really think the operators were doing this on purpose? Of course, deleting was the only way out. Aiden told her to stop talking nonsense because he could fix them. The girl accused him of lying, saying that it was impossible. Arya told the two to cool down. Mia didn't believe that the bugs could be fixed. No one except the moderator was capable of that. Then she suggested getting straight to the point. Arya asked if Aiden had considered becoming a moderator, as was proper, since that was the only way to achieve their goals and nothing else. So let him consider this question rhetorical because he was obliged to become a moderator. Aiden was shocked. What was she even talking about? First she brought a cameraman here, and now she was asking for this. The guy couldn't understand what she was planning. What was her goal? Arya responded that she wanted to remove the current moderator from his post. For now, that was all she could tell. Let him believe her words. After all, he himself wanted to take revenge on the moderator. So they have the same goal, so why not join forces? The girl couldn't cope on her own, and she really needed Aiden. She received a large fine from the moderator and was now unable to use most of the system. There were a lot of questions spinning in the guy's head, but she would probably answer them now. Now it was time to start discussing future plans. First, having moderator powers does not make Aiden a moderator. To become a real moderator, you need to create content. And for this, it would be better to personally go through everything that exists in this world. Mia exclaimed, asking if the girl was sure that such a moron would make a good moderator. And in general, it would be better if Arya herself became one. After thinking about what she had said, the operator realized that she had behaved tactlessly and apologized. During the negotiations, one of the men approached Aiden. He recalled that the boy asked to share provisions with everyone who arrived in the village, but there probably might not be enough food. Could he use the shared storage again? The operator overheard their conversation. Aiden agreed, and opening a portal with his ability, took the bag out of the storage. At that moment, Mia remembered that she had received many complaints about missing items. The guy said to contact him if I needed anything else. It was all free anyway. After hearing this, the operator was furious and, biting Aiden's hand, asked, in what sense was all this for free? Where did he see this? He was the one to blame for all the numerous complaints. The girl asked to return everything back right now. Aiden and Arya stood on a hill near a tree, and below, people were making fires near the tents. There were many cuts visible on the boy's cheeks, which caused discomfort. It was the work of the damn fox. Arya laughed, pouring the health potion on the guy, and replied that the operators have many different concerns. Why should it bother him? Let them figure it out for themselves now. Mia just pissed him off and left. Why the hell did Arya even bring her? The girl told him not to be so angry with her because this little fox came to help them. She happily listened to Arya's request. They couldn't get in touch precisely because she was dating Mia. The operators had banned Aiden, and if he wanted their plan to work, he needed to get out from under their control, so she distracted them. But in what way exactly Arya preferred to keep a secret? There were other creatures in this world that threatened the system. Aiden asked again, did she really mean viruses? Before he came back here, he fought with one of them, helping those people. Hearing his words, Arya grabbed the guy in fear. Arya began to examine Aiden's body with her energy, and thank God, there were no traces of infection. Had some virus found out about Aiden's abilities? If so, there would be big problems, and she would have to figure it out. The guy grabbed the girl by the hands to stop this misunderstanding and ordered her to calm down. Arya couldn't believe it and asked again if he really had encountered the virus and how did it happen. If it happened again, he had to drop everything and run away. Viruses are in some ways even more dangerous than moderators and operators. They could easily swallow him up. It's a miracle he's alive. If Aiden had made even the slightest mistake, he would have been caught, but it's okay because he's already deleted. Did he really do it? He was able to defeat the virus only because he had help, otherwise he wouldn't have managed it. Arya said that removing the virus was no easy task. Perhaps Aiden really was born to be a moderator. The guy wanted to ask, were NPCs removed because of viruses or for some other reason? If we don't react quickly, the whole system will collapse, and at the moment there are no other measures available other than removal. He understood this, but still could not forgive the moderator for what he had done. Innocent NPCs were removed simply because they were in the wrong place, even though they had nothing to do with the virus. The current system is one big mistake. They are viruses and moderators. We need to create a new one that no one can reach with their little hands. So Aiden decided to take on this role and become the new moderator. Arya was pleasantly surprised that now their views were similar because only he was capable of changing something. Since he agreed to become a moderator, there were a few things he needed to know. The first thing he had to do was approve the operators. Even if he became the moderator, it would be difficult to manage such a large amount of information alone. The girl, reaching for the guy's face, begged him to choose her as the first operator. There was a meeting of operators at a round table. Someone told Lloyd to stop everything, but what kind of nonsense was that? He had a lot of other work to do besides fixing the bug. Most of the operators were here because an emergency meeting had been called. It was unlikely that she had called them just to say something so outrageous. There must have been a bigger reason, right? Lloyd asked me as cameraman. One of the operators named Dyke said yes, and now they will not tell them anything special. They have been discussing the same thing over and over again and suggested to finish it quickly. Mia wasn't in the mood for a joke today and ordered me to take my feet off the table and listen carefully. Or maybe Drake's mug was itching to be painted. Operator Mia asked for attention and announced that the reason for the emergency meeting was that she had found the main body of the worm virus. Selena replied that if it was a worm, then it was one of the named viruses. They had enough problems with other things, but this guy, with his cloning ability, was causing the most serious damage to the system. The girl found him in a bad sector. Now that the search radius has narrowed, the team of operators must not miss the opportunity to track him down. She had already reported everything to the moderator. This time they had to delete it at all costs. Everyone in the room noticed something special and was in complete shock. In the distance, two people were walking from whom incredible strength emanated. One of them turned out to be the patron spirit portion, who addressed all the operators present. The master moderator was with him, and the spirit announced his arrival. The operators discussed the personal arrival of the moderator since he rarely showed up unless the matter was serious. What brought him here? Perhaps he read Mia's report. Then there was a chance he would personally take charge. Aiden received a request to see if he would like to endorse Arya for the position of cameraman. It turned out that this was his first step in the role of moderator. Arya helped him with many things. She knows enough about the system, and she is also very strong. So there is no better candidate for the position of his first operator. After choosing the answer yes, Arya glowed with a blinding light. With this choice, Aiden was able to use the system and the firewall was reformed. Arya was now the real operator. The girl cried with happiness and threw herself into the boy's arms. She was infinitely happy and grateful. It was very difficult for him all this time, and now he has risen to such a level. Where did such a fragile girl get so much strength from? I wonder what level she had. As soon as Aiden had time to think about Arya's status, a window appeared in which he could use this function. But, unfortunately, an error occurred. The moderator's powers are insufficient, and the request was blocked by another moderator. Even his current powers weren't enough. What was Arya really doing that was such a secret? At that moment, the village was in full swing of renovations, and people were trying to rebuild their houses. Mr. Jake and Siri had to go for resources as there were now many more people, and resources were being used up very quickly. They tried to get them themselves, but more and more magical creatures appeared in the area, so hunting and getting wood became more difficult. Presumably, this is due to the nearby dungeon. Jake planned to go there to investigate in the coming days. It would be difficult for him to do this alone, so he will go with the magician. But why bother? They can simply use the storage. And then he remembered the angry Mia, who asked him to stop using the storage. Arya came up and asked if the guy was really going to the dungeon. He explained that it was not him, but Jake and Syria. The girl replied that she didn't know about them, but Aiden had to go without fail. The team of 4 people was already approaching the entrance to the dungeon. This was the second time after the boy defeated the guard. But before that, he had already met those who would be stronger than magical creatures. So there should be no problems. Aiden said that it was possible to enter. Arya shouted to stop. She knew he was going to go in there so easily. He didn't understand anything about the dungeons. Did he know what kind of magical creatures spawn there? Did he know what items to bring with him or how to fight them, for example? And in general, normally, had he ever killed magical creatures? They weren't the kind that were found around villages. In addition to possessing magic, they also knew how to set traps like players. Well, of course, if he was strong enough, there was nothing to worry about, so he could handle them alone. This is why using moderator skills is prohibited here. In the future, he will find himself in dungeons more than once, and in order to understand what it is like from the point of view of an ordinary person, he needs to experience everything on his own skin. It would be useful for all of them to gain experience fighting in such places, as it would help them become stronger by earning points to level up, since they were no longer NPCs. Standing next to each other in a circle, they tried to defend themselves from the attacks of mythical creatures. The guy ordered a retreat, and everyone accepted his command. Where did they even come from in such numbers? The team stood behind one of the cave walls to catch their breath. Arya was indeed right. Aiden had underestimated the dungeon. If it weren't for her help and advice on using ambush traps, these fights would have been much more difficult. Most mobs were immune to physical and magical attacks. Arya came back to them apologizing for leaving them. She needed to find something. There were a lot of different creatures standing behind her. Who did she bring with her? The girl assured that everything was fine because constantly paying attention to them was a waste of time. Looking at the levels of the others, she noticed good progress. She was beginning to worry that this dungeon was too high level, but for newbie raiders, they were doing well. Jake couldn't believe that they could now increase their level. He felt the power overflowing his entire body. Now it's clear why players are chasing a higher level. They had to thank Aiden for that because with his power, they all got an upgrade. What would they do without him? It was time to stop this silly talk and get back to business. They found themselves in front of an entrance with a skull with 4 horns hanging above it. Siri said she felt a powerful energy coming from within, but can they handle it? Arya asked why he stopped. Wasn't he going to go in? But Aiden already thought he would die before he got here, and if they went any further, they wouldn't get out unharmed. Recently, a question occurred to Mr. Jake. Since they were no longer NPCs, what would happen if they died? Previously, the system would have revived them, but now? Would they be completely destroyed? Arya reassured them by saying that they were all currently protected by a firewall. The firewall is a shield that the system protects them with. It is an obstacle to external attacks. Protection from death is also its function. Of course, someone who died will not be able to recover on the spot. However, they will be revived and moved to a designated location. Their personal respawn zone is the village of Urk. Jake, Aiden, and Siri began looking around themselves to see the firewall, but only the operators had that ability. Now they had to stop the conversation and feel everything that was said for themselves if they still wanted to become stronger. At that moment, a man in the village brought a large amount of resources in boxes. But at the place where he placed the boxes, an explosion occurred coming from underground. A team that had been going underground found itself at the scene of the explosion. Apparently the firewall worked, and they really weren't dead. This was the first time Mr. Jake had been attacked by a magical creature. But what actually happened in the end, Aiden didn't have time to figure it out either. After entering the gate, everything went smoothly at first. But then they all died from a micro-attack carried out by one of the dungeon's inhabitants. Arya explained that it was a boss, and it was much harder to defeat. Each boss has its own special technique, unique. It is a distinctive feature, a feature of each dungeon. How could this thing be killed? The girl repeated that each boss has his own signature attack, but if you don't know what it is, you'll have to die until you figure it out. Aiden and his team died over and over again and didn't understand what this boss's special feature was. They tried their best to stop him, but nothing worked. At this rate, they would be killed again. Suddenly, Aiden noticed something. There were crystals spinning around the boss, and it seemed like that was it. Aiden was about to strike, thereby splitting all these crystals. It all worked out. This was their chance to attack. They finally won, clearing the Urch dungeon mine. Aiden raised his level to 60. They were incredibly happy with the victory. Aiden praised Siri and Jake for trying hard. Suddenly, the guy noticed a golden chest appearing from behind. It was a reward that contained many jewels inside. Siri looked at the gems. With them, they wouldn't have to worry about money for a long time. Aiden was also glad to see them because now he would no longer be able to rely on the storage facility forever, and they would now be able to feed themselves independently. Arya congratulated the guy on the successful raid and praised him for his work. The girl asked if they could be trusted to handle the rest of it because she still had things to do. She wanted Aiden to go somewhere with her for a while, and that was very important. The boy followed Arya down a long corridor lined with columns. This place was exactly like the dungeon he had been in last time. What should you do if that guy suddenly appears again? There was a bright light coming from the end of the corridor. The girl asked if he remembered how she disappeared for a while. Her absence was precisely because of the keeper of the dungeon. In the room with the large arch stood precisely him, but soulless. Most dungeons have custodians. They are a type of guardian of the system. Their job is not only to destroy bugs that appear in their domain, but also to allow magical creatures to escape into the outside world. What would happen if the keeper was destroyed? As far as Arya knew, the system would simply replace him with another. Aiden breathed a sigh of relief since this wasn't some kind of serious act. He probably already guessed why they came here. As a moderator, he needed to make the dungeon keepers his own. However, if you poach too many at once, the operators may catch on, so it's best to take it slow. There was nothing complicated about it. The principle is the same as with NPCs. Aiden touched the keeper's chest with his hand and he came to life. Now the guardian from the dungeon was under Aiden's power. Arya congratulated him on his new beginnings. Now, this entire zone has become his domain. If he continues in this spirit, he can do without problems. The guy had to find more operators he could trust with this place, and it wasn't Arya. You could tell from her face that she was upset. Is there something wrong? She won't have any trouble managing this location. She hesitated and asked if he trusted her. Of course, the girl had kept a lot from him, so it was fair. But be that as it may, Arya was ready to accept any decision he made. But that wasn't the point. He needed her by his side. Would she want to stay here? It would be much more useful if she helped him experience all the content of this world. And besides, he needs to find something. And to do this, he must increase his moderator powers. Aiden didn't care what secret she had because she was now his cameraman. He warned her that he would overwhelm her with work, that she wouldn't know where to go. The girl promised to make a real moderator out of him at any cost. The guy was already in the house with Siri and Jake. They were shocked because Aiden had asked them to be his cameraman. They weren't sure if they could be trusted, and it was a responsible position. He didn't just offer her. While they were together for a few days, the guy felt something. The villagers follow exactly these two. That's why he considered them the most suitable candidate. Arya confirmed his words and told him not to overthink it because there was nothing complicated about it. And if they don't know something, the girl will easily teach them. In the end, Mr. Jake and Siri agreed to be the operator and promised to do their best. In another world, among the blood-red sky, thunder and lightning rumbled. In the bad world, the worm gathered all its inhabitants. By the way, they all already knew why they had gathered here. The moderator has taken personal action in this whole situation, so he will definitely get to them. All its copies are being deleted at a tremendous speed. Those that remain are still sufficient for collecting information. However, it will be necessary to temporarily suspend monitoring of the moderator's movements if they do not want to be deleted, and the virus ordered to sit quietly as mice. By the way, it was hard to believe that no one could track Mr. Trojan's route. Where did he disappear to? The worm found a very interesting specimen that he wanted to show to Trojan. Now Aiden could leave the village to Siri and Jake. The girl is sure that there is no need to worry, and it is possible to contact them at any time, and also, if Mr. Aiden needs help, then she can move to him at any time. The guy was surprised that Arya was able to teach them so well. The village would be in good hands as they had both kept up with the pace of their studies. In her spare time, Arya had been developing the project he had entrusted to her. Now this place would be hidden from the eyes of others, and even operators would not be able to find it so easily for a long time. Aiden thanked the girl for the work she had done, as everything was exactly as he wanted. So the preparations were complete. Since he decided to become a moderator, he could no longer hide. Now he had no right to lose to operators, players, or viruses. Aiden received a message that the training was complete, and he now had basic moderator skills. This meant that everything would really begin only from this moment. Now everyone will be able to see how Aiden will change this system. But where would be the best place to start this journey? Arya knew that such a question would arise, and so she came up with a guide with recommendations for wandering noobs. Suddenly, the guy received a voice call from Kevin. Arya was outraged that he still had time to get to know other players, but Aiden asked him to be quiet. After the guy picked up the phone, Kevin asked if he was bothering him. The player reminded him of the last time he asked to join their guild. So, now they were going to help the newcomers, and he offered to participate too. By the way, the reward will be considerable, so this will be a good chance to get along well with the players and get to know them. Aiden agreed to this meeting, and the guy said that he would send the coordinates a little later. The girl was angry because she didn't understand why he needed the help of other players if he had her. Arya had prepared so much for the guy, and now it was all down the drain. She suggested just ignoring this Kevin. Aiden replied that it was just a meeting, where he wouldn't be for long. They arrived in a fairly large city called Town. Standing in front of the bar entrance, Aiden realized that this was where it was. When they entered, they saw only players drinking huge mugs of beer. Someone's hand from the crowd rose up and called to him. It was Kevin. Aiden had indeed rushed over after the call. The guy thanked him for agreeing to come and turned his attention to the beautiful girl with Aiden. Her long blue hair was fluttering, and she looked at him modestly with an innocent face. The two guys stepped aside for a minute to talk. Kevin asked who they were to each other, and the other replied that they were just friends. Arya was thinking about how he had helped Aiden during the unscheduled inspection, and Aiden had added him as a friend, and it was worth finding out what his plans were for Aiden. Kevin extended his hand to the lady and said hello. He introduced himself and offered to add her as a friend if she was up for it. The girl refused, showing disapproval. Apparently, she wasn't particularly interested in him. The guy thought that another opportunity would present itself later. He called Aiden over and asked if he had introduced him to other players. There were 3 people sitting at the table. These were the team members with whom they would be hunting today. The guy noted that he said that these people were newbies, and they really did have quite low levels. So, Kevin will now tell them what they will do. They are going to hunt the field boss. The level of that location is low, but the reward for catching the boss is pretty good, and their strength is quite enough to defeat him. And if anything, the player will be able to ensure them. The team set out and found themselves in a troll canyon. The recommended level for passing was 45. Now all that was left was to wait. The guy repeated that he would watch them because if he relied on a boost from a friend, he would not be able to grow in skills. The voices of unknown people were heard from behind. They were saying that a giant was about to appear, and they had already learned the timings, such as this location was under their control. Things seemed to be going poorly, and another team came in to take their place. Other players noticed them and weren't particularly happy with the competition. The leader of the team ordered to get out of here because this was their hunting ground. The new girl started to get indignant because how could they occupy locations for hunting? And anyway, they were the first to come here. The rude man asked to repeat why on earth the low-level cur dared to open her mouth in his direction. At their level, there was no place for them here. They should have shut up and gotten out. Kevin knew it was time to get to the bottom of this. He grabbed the man by his clothes and asked him where he had ever seen players book their own hunting spots. They did what they wanted and suggested PvP. Did Kevin really think that because he was in the Griffin Guild he could get involved? At this rate, he would only lower his karma. The man ordered the other players to quickly eliminate their competitors. Kevin tried to stop the fight, but if he even moved, the man would intervene too. One of the players walked up to Aiden, grabbed him by the shoulder, and ordered him to get lost. This was followed by a strong punch to the player's face. The man flew to the side and an explosion occurred. Noticing this, Kevin and the leader of the other team looked at what had happened. Aiden shook himself off and looked at the player lying in the pile of rocks and asked who he had laid his dirty paws on. The first one to arrive at the place got the good. So let these mediocrities understand. The leader ordered that they deal with Aiden quickly, and they rushed into the attack. But the guy was able to easily knock down one of the players, kick the second one in the stomach, and finish him off with a second blow to the head. The man was about to engage in combat with Aiden, but before he showed off, he should find out who he was dealing with. He was the next head of the Hydra Guild branch and was going to deal with him. His tattoo is the symbol of one of the 5 great guilds. The leader's next move was stopped by Kevin, who held a powerful weapon in his hand and said that he was no longer going to stand aside. Was this the decision of the Griffin Guild? Is he prepared to take responsibility for this later? Aiden took the guy by the shoulder and said that he had everything under control and he could figure it out himself because a fight with such a show-off was easy as pie. The man used his magic to strike, but Aiden was able to dodge it in time, leaving a huge crack in the wall. The leader mocked him and thought that Aiden could only talk, but in reality, he had lost his nerve. They had already kicked them out, the noobs, so why had he butted into something that wasn't his business? Come on, let him bark again. Aiden suddenly lunged forward with great speed. In a second, he was already at the man's side and ready to strike. The leader was scared and didn't understand where he suddenly got such speed from. With the help of his ability, the guy increased his characteristics and delivered a fatal blow to the face. They suffered lethal damage, and the man was transported to the respawn point. After this, the players realized that they had to be wary of this guy and run away as quickly as possible. Kevin couldn't believe his eyes. How could Aiden have become so strong? It had been so little time since their last meeting. The guy had said he was level 60. Was it even possible to rise that high? Had he hidden his true level? The newbies ran up to Aiden with admiration and said how cool it was. Kevin apologized and said that he couldn't help him because if he attacked members of other guilds, he would get into trouble. By the way, now his karma will decrease. He hoped that it was not critical. Aiden's karma has been lowered by 17. Players who returned to the city saw an angry player. Having punched the wall, he realized what a disgrace it was and could not believe that some low-level rat had been able to defeat him and was now running around calmly, not even thinking that he had raised his hand against the future head of the Hydra Guild branch. Now he will pay double for humiliating the man. Someone was watching his team from the roof. It was Arya. She overheard their conversation and what the man was planning to talk to the branch manager. Aiden, having great strength, dealt colossal damage to the boss. Their level increased. The players were happy that Aiden managed to kill him. After such a heroic act, they wanted to add him as a friend. The guy noticed that it was much easier to fight the monster when there was such a tactic. Aiden didn't care about the reward, but the experience gained was priceless. Kevin praised the guy. It was the first time he had seen such a strong rookie like him, so he once again offered to join their guild. Those Hydra Guild guys he had killed for revenge would be willing to throw away even their own reputation and pride. He didn't know when exactly, but they would definitely want to spite him. If the guy joins them, even a great guild won't be able to touch him just like that, and they will be able to protect him. The request had already been sent. Aiden thought that there were some advantages to this, but he wanted to hear from Arya, who had disappeared somewhere. What should he do now? Several masked players stood near the 13th branch of the Hydra Guild base. A man was scolding the rival leader for returning in defeat. He should be ashamed, and how could this unknown person trust his place now? Once someone touches a member of their guild, he must pay a heavy price for it. The man ordered to take the boys with him, but for this, he had to trample the enemy's face into the dirt. The leader smiled sarcastically because he understood that now the boy would be finished. He would make sure that he would never set foot on his territory again. Suddenly, he heard screams behind him. Arya burst into the room and strangled all the guards who were guarding the branch. Everyone present was in shock. Who was she? An incredible flow of energy emanated from her. The man was outraged that the guards couldn't cope with some little girl. He didn't care who she was and ordered the remaining guards to finally capture her. A large crowd of people surrounded the girl, all armed with weapons. What a fool she is! She shouldn't have come to them alone. Now, she won't just run away, but she'll feel for herself why their guild has such a disgusting reputation. The man ordered the guards not to kill her because first they needed to find out which guild had sent her. After that, Arya blew up the castle walls and people lay around unconscious. The man couldn't believe his eyes. Players like her were at least level 100. The guildmaster was angered by her behavior. Was she really so bold as to invade his branch? He was already ready to strike with a huge sword, using his magic, but this did not frighten the girl at all. A man was standing in the library near a large shelf of books. This noise prevented him from concentrating, and for this reason, he closed the book. What was going on there? One of the workers reported that he had just learned that they had apparently been invaded. It was a total bummer, because the guy decided to come here. And then something stupid happened. He asked how many attackers there were. After a short pause, the worker said that he was just one. Perhaps the guy misheard and asked to repeat it again. Walking down the corridor, the worker said that she was now in the office of the head of the branch. The doors to the huge hall swung open and the young man walked inside. In front of him, he saw a girl who easily dealt with everyone who was there and especially the boss. And really, there was nothing wrong with her. Did they really want to say that one player was beyond their power? Did they want to defame the name of the guild? Another explosion followed. People covered their faces from falling debris. That guy was the person in charge of their guild, Mr. Avant. They were very lucky, otherwise he didn't know what to do. Since she had dealt with even the head, Mr. Avant would certainly show her her place. But his blow didn't even scratch her. Was she really a high-ranking player like him? We'll have to try our best to overcome her. He ordered them to get out now if they didn't want to die. The guy started forming a fireball in his hands. If someone got hit, it wouldn't be his fault. Avant aimed a crushing blow straight at the girl. Seeing this in front of her, Arya didn't even move. There was an explosion, and the man already thought he had overcome her. There she stood again, without a single scratch. Against the wall, with the hole that had formed after the blow, which only made the guy even more angry. But will Arya be able to stand against another more powerful force? After these words, Avant vented all his energy on the floor. The girl stood in a circle that appeared around her. At that moment, a huge force caused the fire to rise high into the air, destroying the upper part of the tower. Seeing Arya in the same plate, who didn't even move, shocked him greatly because he was sure that he had hit her with his ultimate skill right on her. But then how the hell did she remain unharmed? The girl sighed and said that she understood him, that here he was the strongest. It was disappointing, of course, but nothing could be done. Grabbing the guy by the face, she explained that she came to them because they had gotten too carried away. Arya ordered to look carefully and remember her face well, and also to convey a few words to her guildmaster, that if they were to get in her eyes, there would be no stone left of them. The girl pressed her hands hard into Avant's eyes. He couldn't believe he lost so easily. She's not an ordinary high-level player, maybe she's a ranker? Then there was a quick jerk that left an energetic trace. The girl slammed the player into the ground, leaving behind a huge crater. There was practically nothing left of the base, only ruins and the guild flag. A hand appeared among the rubble. Avant was trying to get out from under the rubble. How many times in a row had he died already? It took him so much effort to level up, but it was all in vain. He couldn't just forgive something like that. Because of his shame, the girl would definitely pay. At this time in Doontown, Kevin was talking to Aiden and asked if he was sure that everything would be okay, because if he joined their guild, everything would be much safer. The guy assured that everything would be fine and that he would be able to protect himself. In any case, these would be his problems, but if anything happened, he could write to him. Afterwards, they said goodbye, and Kevin asked him to take care of himself. He also warned him not to even think about sticking his nose into the vicinity of the Hydra Guild. Arya came up behind the guy, saying that they were finally done. Aiden wanted to see her. Where had she been all this time? Wasn't it obvious? She thought those guys would have a grudge against him, so she dealt with them. She was talking about the Hydra Guild. Their base was nearby. The girl dropped by to say hello. Players passing by were discussing what had happened to the Hydra base. After all, it had just recently been safe and sound, and now there were only ruins left there. It wasn't even that. Didn't he think that it could have been the work of the other 5 guilds? There were also rumors that the culprit was a ranker. At this rate, it might even lead to a guild war. Arya calmed the guy down, saying that now they wouldn't even have time for him, and there was no longer any reason to worry about some Hydra. The girl assured that she could figure everything out herself, and indeed, such antics were her style. Although, if they had attacked Aiden, they would have had to postpone studying the world, so Arya eliminated the possible obstacles for him. The guy took something out of the storage room and extended his clenched fist to the girl. To tell the truth, he wanted to give it away even then. But it took him a little time, because it was the first time he made something with his own hands. It was a small black pendant in the shape of a triangle. It had a communication function, and also indicated their location, so from now on, before she rushed off somewhere, she had to signal with this thing first. Aiden asked her not to disappear like she usually did without saying a word. Arya pressed the pendant to her chest, thanked him, and promised to keep it carefully and use it. Today's operator meeting left Drake quite tired. Mia was about to leave, but the operator called her. Zenon wanted to tell her that he had found the main body of the worm. This time he was very active. Unfortunately, he failed to catch it. There are few operators who are able to resist the worm alone. If that were all, Mia would be leaving, as she already had a ton of things to do. Zenon asked why she was not the first to make a report. This question stunned the girl. When it comes to a virus, the first thing you need to do is report it to a moderator. If she had done it the way she should have, the result might have been different. She explained her actions by saying that she was not sure of the accuracy of the information. But was it her information, or perhaps she had gotten close to someone? It seems this operator suspects something is wrong. These questions made Mia very angry. Was he really going to interrogate her right from the doorway? It was just a simple check and nothing more. She knew as well as anyone that his duties included eliminating threats in the inner circles, so she had no right to ignore his questions. This is all necessary only for the sake of the system moderator. Now, Zeno made her answer where she got the information from. If the answer was not convincing enough, the man would continue to suspect her. Or perhaps she was planning to follow in the footsteps of the traitor Arya. This was followed by an explosion aimed at Zenon's operator. The girl was furious. The man tried to defend himself. How dare he even say such a thing about Arya? Mia was about to strike again when she suddenly noticed something. Their fight was observed by the patron spirit Procyon, who erected a barrier to stop the battle. The lady reminded that contractions were prohibited here and asked to stop immediately. After the dismantling, the building's columns were destroyed. Zeno asked her not to do anything stupid and said that he would continue to watch her. He would not like to see her among his enemies. This was not a warning. Mia thought about it and remembered a moment when she was very little. She was sitting against the wall in dirty and torn clothes, covering herself with her hands. But at that moment, Arya appeared and extended a helping hand. The girl said that she would never forget what happened today. Several operators observed their conversation. A terrible noise was coming from here. What the hell happened here? Drake noticed that Mia was angry. One camera girl asked him if he thought Zenon had started the fight because of some problem that had arisen. Did he really suspect Mia? Those words were some kind of stupidity. For now, it was necessary to simply observe, since the reason was unlikely to be serious. Meanwhile, in the village, Arya asked Aiden if he refused, and he agreed. He didn't want to make a decision without consulting the girl, and he didn't particularly regret it. If necessary, the opportunity would probably come up again. The girl replied that being in a guild was good, but the guy thought that she would be against it. After all, the guild is also a part of this world. And besides, Arya was familiar with the head of the Griffins. He was a very good person. If he suddenly decided to join them, the girl would immediately contact the leader. Aiden thought that perhaps they should also create their own guild. Ciri replied to Master Aiden that she had set up the guild hall exactly where he had said. He didn't have to worry about the materials, and the guy could send them through the cloud to the village's combined storage, and if there was anything needed, she could tell him about it at any time. Aiden relied on the girl, and she promised that she would not let him down. There were many people gathered around the hall. Mr. Jake asked, "What was that?" And another man wanted to know if she had spoken to Mr. Aiden. Ciri dispersed the crowd and ordered them not to stand like a pillar, but to move and carry out Aiden's orders. Nothing else was needed to create a guild. The hall was the minimum requirement for its creation. Now all that was left was to wait for the construction to be completed. What should they do in the meantime? Arya said she had something on her mind. She asked him if he remembered how she told him about the beginner's guide and suggested going to the place that was planned for it. They arrived at a place called the Calling Tower. This building was frightening in its size. The rules were simple. You had to defeat the monster on one floor to get to the next. Some people are looking here to profit from valuable things or want to set a new record. But this was all for nerds, and they just wanted to have fun and gain experience. Fun is good, of course, but Aiden has decided to become a moderator, so he will do everything conscientiously. The girl warned that his level was completely unimportant here, but the ability to combine abilities was, on the contrary. If he didn't mind, before heading to the tower, she'd like to see what class abilities he was using. The guy agreed and gave her this opportunity. The girl was dumbfounded when she saw the ability level on the list. What the hell was that? Where did he get all his skills? Aiden replied that he had been like that from the very beginning and thought that all players were exactly like him. However, he did not see their ability window. His stat points didn't increase, but for such a low level he seemed too strong to Arya. Now it was clear what the matter was. He also had class skills that could not be combined with each other. The girl had never encountered such skills even among current operators. Her guess was right. Aiden was special, and if he continued to grow like he did, it was only a matter of time before he became a moderator. On the contrary, it was cool. Now you don't have to worry about boring things like combining. Aiden easily defeated his enemies, but their numbers only increased. After each victory over a mythical creature, its level increased. The girl watched and thought about how fast he attacks and even alone. And he also combines well and applies his skills. After comparing with the same level and skill requirement, she now understands how amazing Aiden's fighting ability is. The guy said it wasn't as hard as he thought it would be, but it was still a bad idea to let your guard down. The difficulty will increase. The higher he rises, the more difficult it is to conquer them by conventional means. This tower ended at the 50th floor, which meant that he was already halfway there. Then it was necessary to hurry and conquer the remaining floors. Arya said that the difficulty increased rapidly as they climbed the tower. Monsters incomparable to those on the lower floors appeared one after another. He was also hampered by boss-class monsters, but he was able to overcome all of them using the countless skills the boy possessed. On the 49th floor, the monster wanted to strike with a huge hammer. Luckily, Aiden managed to escape because the concrete at that spot had cracked and shattered into pieces. It was quite dangerous. His strength was incredible, and on top of that, he was also quite agile. It would be bad if he hit a human. If so, should he try using magic skills this time? Now he has physical enhancement plus acceleration and magic skills. This is his first time using this combination, but it is enough to get rid of this guy. Aiden, getting closer, flew up to the monster from above. The main blow landed on the head, and this blow became fatal. The creature lay on the floor and its weapon flew to the side. Only ruins remained around. Now the penultimate floor was cleared. It was nice. It felt like it was compatible with the stat increased edit again. All that was left now was the top floor. A staircase opened up in front of him, leading up to the arena. Rising up, he saw a huge red portal in front of him from which the final boss emerged. Its dimensions were crushing. In his hands, he held a magic staff, with the help of which he collected all the energy and was preparing to strike. A cursed barrier appeared around them, with the help of which the effects of general skills are reduced. Also, all skills are reduced by 50%, and on top of that, the guy will receive a temporary increase in damage taken. He realized that if it was a debuff of this magnitude, it would be difficult for the players. Aiden was a bad matchup for him, and the debuff was removed. It seemed like even his best skill wasn't working for the guy. Aiden suggested to finish it quickly. Taking a huge sword, the guy wanted to quickly deal with the monster and finish the passage of the tower. He was able to make attacks very quickly. Due to the creature's ability, a large number of stones rose up and headed towards the boy. Using his magic, Aiden channeled the power into them, causing everything to fall to the ground. The guy began to gain speed, holding a heavy weapon in his hand. He was already approaching the boss and was preparing to deliver the finishing blow. His plan succeeded, and the monster was defeated. The system congratulated Aiden on his completion, and a personal best was achieved. The guy sighed, realizing that it was finally over. This content was better than he could have imagined. Looking around, Aiden didn't understand where the exit was. Then he noticed a portal that seemed to be an exit. Even though it was an exit to the outside, it looked strange. From behind, Arya clapped her hands and congratulated him. She didn't think he would be able to make it right away and reach the top, since it was impossible to get through all 50 floors on the first try. The girl appeared just in time to ask about the portal. Pointing to the place where he was, Arya said that she couldn't see anything. Was he the only one who saw it? Looking at his hand, he noticed that he was gradually disappearing. The worried girl ordered him to hurry up and get out of here, but the guy disappeared into thin air along with the portal. Aiden got into the internal system. It looks like it was related to the admins or operators. Looking down, he saw many rooms in the tower where players were fighting monsters. The guy landed below, looked around, did not understand what kind of place this was. He noticed a blue light. Maybe it was Sirius. In front of him was an entrance with the number 3. Where was it leading him? A new quest called The Forgotten was added. The rewards for completing it were level 1 admin powers and a new team. It's been so long since they've seen each other, it seems like it's not over yet. Arya used the pendant to call Aiden and breathed a sigh of relief, feeling less anxious knowing he was safe. She couldn't send him a message, so she used the June pendant to contact him. The guy asked if she could pinpoint his location. The location was found. The girl had come all the way to the exit to find it. But there was one problem. Arya had never seen anything like it before. She thought she could break through the defenses and get there, but she assumed it would attract attention. But in any case, she would try to find another way. She just had to wait a little longer. The guy replied that there was no need for that because there was something he had to do, something that only he could do. He asked not to worry about him as he can leave whenever he wants because he can use the cloud. She should wait a little, but if something happens, Aiden will definitely contact her. In that case, he needs to be careful. After the conversation, the guy opened the doors and went inside. In the room, he saw a huge number of all kinds of monsters and, what's more, they didn't move at all. An unknown voice explained that this was all because they were unable to update. A flying guard appeared in front of Aiden and asked how the boy got there. No one except the administrator can enter here. The system recognized the guard as an unidentified entity. At that moment, the monsters turned on and surrounded the guy. The unidentified entity felt that a power, similar to that of an administrator, was emanating from Aiden. However, he was not an administrator. After saying that all violators should be excluded, a large number of monsters attacked him. Aiden was already prepared for this and fought off everyone. It would be a bit difficult with a normal one, so should he go all out? The guy pulled out Ellis's sledgehammer. Now, with just one blow, he could take down dozens of monsters. The unknown man connected the unidentified creature to the system and found that it worked perfectly. Judging by his reaction, apparently there were no problems. Now he will look after this tower for him. Countless players are waiting for him to update, so now he leaves it to him. This being's job was to protect the place until the renewal took place. So at all costs, he began to attack the guy with sharp stones. Aiden was able to dodge them and head towards the mythical creatures. Holding his own weapon, he fought off everyone around him. This created a huge plume of smoke in which he managed to hide. It didn't matter, the guy showed up and the monster tried to attack him. Aiden tried to defend himself with his sword. Did he really think such a cheap trick would work on a guard? Aiden noticed that all the stones beneath his feet were cracked. Something like a huge creature with sharp fangs burst out from under the ground. It tried to grab the man with its teeth. The guy managed to cut his head off, thereby defeating him. Things were going badly. Aiden was already tired of just waving the weapon around a bit. Its effectiveness is amazing, and the energy consumption is insane. He had to finish all this as soon as possible and fight the main danger. The unknown creature understood that this sword was dangerous and could stop it with its own powers, but now it will not be able to touch anyone. The guard was still trying to attack the guy with a more powerful ability. There were a lot of explosions, but Aiden, as always, managed to escape. He jumped from place to place, thereby dodging attacks. Eventually, the guy was able to get close enough. The guardian relied on his barrier, but Aiden, thrusting his sword into it, was able to split it. After this, there was practically no living space left on the creature. The guardian was created for the system, so he moves for the system. It didn't matter what he thought. He was just following the mission that was given to him. Finally, it will happen soon. The system will be rebuilt, and the update will start. Arya reported that the guardian had finally woken up. Besides, it was amazing. To think that the underground guardian had consciousness. It was the first time she had seen something like that. After the guard came to his senses, he began to examine his limbs. Now, he had turned into a man. The update was complete. It's surprising that there was someone like that among the guards. Inside the remains, Aiden noticed something shining. Having taken it out, he began to examine it. It was a small red ball from which light emanated. At that moment, Arya called because she was worried that something had happened. She called on time and the guy told her to go to Dune Town. He would be there soon too. He had a lot to talk about and some questions to ask. With the help of the portal, the guy moved to the city and found himself near a bar. Having shown his find to the girl, she replied that it was the core of a high-ranking guard. There were other types besides the dungeon guardian. The high-ranking guardians were so strong that Aiden couldn't even compare them to the normal guardians. There are not many of them because of the control of the administrators, but they have a lot of power. Depending on the nature, they can be stronger than the operators. It's just unbelievable, but why would something like this be left unattended? Perhaps it was because he couldn't renew himself. There are probably more than one or two of these high-ranking guardians who have been left unattended, all of them born with a purpose, but they haven't seen the light yet. This world has stopped. Such guards are not the only problem. Many other things also forget about such an image. If the administrators do not change, this problem will never be solved. Now it was clear that there was a reason why this problem arose. If Aiden's goal is to move a world that has stopped, then if he renews everything, the problem will be solved. Finding himself in the interdimensional zone of the system, the guy began to remove his current body because he needed a new one. Should he try to connect himself first? It would be good to know the answers to all these questions. After this, a new entity was discovered in the system. The update was launched and the body began its creation. The system suggested choosing a name. Just think that Aiden, who was just an NPC, would become a real administrator. This seemed strange, and he decided that from now on his name would be Theodore. Aiden asked the guy what it was like to feel renewed. It was Theodore's long-time wish. From now on, no matter what happened, he would follow Aiden, and he swore to it. He knew there would be difficulties ahead, but strength and determination were on his side. An unknown portal opened in the middle of the ordinary world. One virus cursed the monster. Just think, they found his place. Hundreds of his copies have already disappeared. Apparently this time, the administrator was serious. It looks like if he stays here, he will also be deleted. At that moment, the administrator quietly crept up to the virus, but it didn't even notice him right away. The administrator, without further ado, tried to delete it. As he thought, the large virus was well hidden. How long has the virus been waiting for this moment? It immediately began to attack. The administrator was good at escaping. The virus was ready to swear that it would not miss him again, and he attacked with an even greater flow of energy, absorbing the administrator's body. A huge purple dome appeared at the site from the explosion. Suddenly, the virus noticed a bright energy coming from behind the clouds. Mistress Procyon arrived and set up a protective barrier in an attempt to protect the administrator. "How dare this little lizard get in the way of the virus?" Procyon asked if the administrator was okay and told him that he shouldn't approach him because she could take care of him herself. The administrator, taking the lady by the shoulder, said that everything was fine and that he could deal with it himself. With his hand, he pushed the girl back, thereby protecting her. The man moved forward towards the strong virus. In fact, there was no end to them. To think that in the short time he had been focused on finding Procyon, the boys had grown so much. But now the administrator was fed up. Not afraid of anything, he took off his mask. With the help of the blocking command, the forces of the worlds fought each other. The whirlwind swirled around the monster with great speed. He found himself in a dark space. It seemed the moderator had planned to make it so that he couldn't escape. The administrator directed the entire flow of force. At this rate, all viruses will soon be removed. The monster tried to stop it by dispersing and ordered its clones to find a way to get out, to escape from here. The administrator was only irritated by the behavior of the virus, and he intended to completely remove it from this location. Now all the evil spirits were trapped in a small ball, which was then destroyed in the hands of the admin. His energy roots went down into the bad zone. In this way, they penetrated the entire body of the worm. The virus fell to the floor trying to cough up some fluid, but purple fluid was coming out of it. All of his copies were deleted at once, and now it will be difficult to restore the ones that were there. Let's see how long the administrator can rule like this. After the evil spirits were removed, the man put his mask back on. Mrs. Procyon was very worried about the administrator and addressed him by the name Astor. He only replied that he was going back and entered the portal. Finally, he returned and sat down in a chair to rest. But suddenly he noticed something wrong out of the corner of his eye. The administrator saw hidden reports sent by Zenon on the monitor. They talked about Mia's behavior, which had become suspicious recently. It was quite possible that she had encountered Arya at some point. He had been expecting this ever since Mia had started keeping an eye on Arya more than usual. Was the girl planning to return to the operator's position? Zeno's message stated that he had found circumstantial evidence that data had leaked to the outside world, and he suspected that it might be Arya. He remembered the moment when he had definitely removed Aiden with his own hands. How did he stay? On top of that, he even got the powers of an administrator. Maybe the guy was a new virus? Regardless, Astor had to act. He created a new team to find Aiden. But this operation failed. The administrator was clearly in complete shock. This information that he couldn't see, did it mean that his number was higher than Astor's? He had been looking for it all this time, but to think that he would find it this way. Is that it? Is that how it is? Looks like there was a Trojan involved. The man called to Lady Procyon and said that there was something he had to do. Procyon must act carefully, because if he finds out that the administrators have noticed him, Trojan will hide again. They had to get Aiden at any cost. Procyon promised that she would put everything she had on the line and would definitely get him. At this time in the village, Theodore asked at all costs to leave this to him, and he would do it to the best of his ability. Aiden replied that he understood but asked to wait a little. If they decided this in the village, they would not be late. The guy asked Arya if all the high-ranking guards were like this. The girl replied that of course they were, since they only moved for the sake of the administrators, and also they had been neglected for a long time, so they were even more motivated. Come to think of it, the demonic monsters were also left unattended. Why were there demonic monsters in that place? Arya explained that they were also part of the system. One of the roles of high-ranking guardians is to get rid of demonic monsters at the appropriate time. Even the demonic monsters from Teo were left unattended because they couldn't update. Then does that mean that the demonic monsters that posed a threat were all just lies? Because monsters are nothing more than equipment for players to grow. It was worth thinking about that. Did Aiden really think that these creatures were a threat to them? They would never die, even if they were attacked by these monsters, as they were perfectly protected by the system. What would really make them dead, though, would be infection with a virus or removal. This really shocked the guy. Had they really been living a lie all this time? Of course, he certainly thought it was weird. The monsters never raided the village because they never left their assigned territory and were under the control of the system all this time. Arya called Aiden and asked him to hurry up, as they had already arrived. Standing on the hill below, they saw the village of Urch. It had changed so much it was clear that the inhabitants had worked hard. Near the tree, Helen and Henry were playing with a little monster. Aiden came up to them and asked how they were. The guys were very happy to see them and rushed to hug the guy. He asked if they knew where Jake and Siri were now. The children replied that they said they were going to the dungeon. Siri and Jake burst into the house with horror on their faces. They were worriedly asking when they had arrived. They should have said they had arrived. Everything was fine. Aiden was just visiting for a while. The guy noticed the effect of the event of doubling experience points. Siri apologized and asked who the man standing behind him was. Theodore, having looked at the guys more closely, said that they looked like operators and he was pleased to meet them. He said he was there to help the new administrator and introduced himself as a high-ranking guard named Theodore, and they can also address him however they want. Siri was a little scared, as it was the first time she saw such a character. The girl had heard from Sirius before that the high-ranking guards were very talented. Jake remarked that it must have been difficult. Aiden was more interested in how the village was doing and if anything had happened while he was unable to contact them. The boys hesitated and looked at each other, wondering if they should tell him. Had something terrible really happened? Siri, looking away slightly, said fearfully that the matter was that the players came to the village. But they weren't causing trouble or anything. They were good-natured people. The players just exchanged a few items and that was it. They also listened to several requests from the residents. They stayed in the village for about a day and returned. But people don't know when something like this is going to happen again, so they prepare in their own way. It was a great relief to Aiden that nothing bad happened. Arya knew it would happen someday, but not so soon. All she did was change the search and make sure nothing showed up on the map. But specifically looking for this place is another matter, because they do not have enough authority to restrict freedom. This means that it is impossible to completely block players. There is nothing they could do about it. Does this mean that they should think about players visiting them in the future? The guy told the guys that if anything happened, they should let him know. Theodore called Aiden and asked him to give him some order too, and he would immediately help him. He just had something he wanted to ask him to take care of, because that was the reason they had returned to the village. Then perhaps it was necessary to start testing slowly. The guy received another command. He gathered all the inhabitants around the mountain. The people discussed among themselves what Mr. Aiden planned to do. This quest brought him great benefit. The guy's strength increased and he received a new team. If so, he can probably do it. Walking up to Arya, he reminded her that she had said earlier that in order to become a real administrator, he had to be able to create content. So now he has decided to show some truly new content. A powerful energy of Aiden emanated from the mountain, spreading for miles around. The guy found himself inside the system. He needed to remember that feeling, the look of the players gathering at the tower. Using the copy command, he wanted to cut out a part of the tower. What he needed was not just a copy, it needed to be improved, a new image created. The tower particles were scattered into a large number of blocks that could be controlled. The new content was updated. All that was left was to choose a name for it, and he called it Tower of Trials. In the real world, an explosion occurred from the mountain. A huge tower appeared out of nowhere. It was much better than the previous one. Aiden finally finished and recovered somehow. It was too tiring. From that moment on, Theo was the guardian of the tower, and his job was also to look after the people who lived in the village. Theodore replied that he could be relied upon and would never disappoint his master. Jake and Siri were worried about Aiden's condition, as he was almost at the end of his life. Arya grabbed the guy and said that he had done a great job today. Two players were arguing. One accused the other of lying, but why didn't he believe him? Because this was not the first time. But now, the man insisted that he was telling the truth. This city is full of rare items. At first, one of the guys thought there was some kind of event here. But the villagers said that for them, these were ordinary things. Before anyone else found the place, the third player told his friends that they should go see for themselves. One of the men said it was all very strange. The last time he was there, he had never seen anything like it. After the moderator blocked that area, he was no longer there. But that didn't matter now. They thought it was a good opportunity for them to make some extra money. Some man overheard their conversation behind the wall and thought they were idiots, since talking about such things on the street was a great chance for other people. This man turned out to be the same player who had once humiliated Aiden. They had to hurry, because they could be thrown out of here too, and this was a great chance to change everything. The boy said that he smelled money and wanted to get it as soon as possible in that village. The players had almost arrived, and the village was indeed not on the map. It looks like other players haven't found this place yet. Suddenly, one of the men noticed that the huge tower had not been there a few seconds ago. Was this some kind of challenge tower, like new game content? Was there an update here? But there was nothing written about it in the news. What did it all mean? The remaining two players ran down the slope because they wanted to be first. Perhaps the man misunderstood something, but anyway, nothing can be done. Looking around, he didn't notice anything new, and his partner said that he thought so too at first. But he would understand as soon as he saw everything with his own eyes. Now, there was a forge in the city. They wanted to see it. Inside, two men were making weapons and decided that that would be enough and that they should take a break. Thanks to Mr. Aiden, their lives have changed too much. He taught them everything and also selects and gives only good materials. Thanks to him, the local instruments became so unusual, for example, those made of diamonds. The villagers panicked that the players had entered their territory again. The man approached one of the players and politely asked what they wanted. Their weapons and armor were of excellent quality, and the player wanted to buy them but did not see the price tags. The blacksmiths looked at each other. They didn't need money, just to fulfill their request, and in return they would get whatever they wanted. As they had already noticed, the village had changed a lot, but they were still missing something. They haven't had enough meat lately. The food here isn't very tasty because it's hard to find good ingredients nearby, so could they share some food with them? Players couldn't believe that this was all true, as the exchange of equipment for food was just great. The man noticed that he had nothing on his quest list, but there was no time to think. He had to go quickly and complete the quest. Two wily players reached the entrance to the village. They didn't know there was such a place in the area at all. They wanted to take advantage of this opportunity, but first, their plan was to find hidden objects. The impudent man kicked open the door to the house without a drop of respect. Inside was a female doctor with another man. After looking around, the players realized that it was a simple house and there was nothing interesting in it. But rummaging through the cabinets and breaking objects, they wanted to make sure that there was definitely nothing there. The man ordered to leave this place quickly. The player asked again what he said. How dare he be impudent to the player? He grabbed the man by the throat, saying that everything had been going badly for him lately. They, the obedient slaves, should be destroyed immediately. The impudent player wanted to hit the man for his words, but when he tried to strike, the resident was protected by a barrier. Enraged, Siri stormed into the house and protected people with magic. Did the player really want to die? Aiden opened his eyes and shot up from the bed, apparently unconscious. He had to spend too much energy, and using the commands was also very draining on his body. Arya was sitting next to the guy's bed, and she had been next to him the whole time. She wanted Aiden to finally understand how important he was to her. He slept all day, most likely because he was tired. It will be easier for him when he gets used to using commands. Having come to his senses, the guy opened the doors of the building and went outside. There he was met by a crowd of people who were happy that he had woken up. They were very worried if he was okay. Through the crowd of people, Dr. Sophia ran forward towards Aiden. She reported that recently one of the players who arrived in the village attacked them. Aiden immediately rushed to find him. Having landed near one of the houses, an explosion immediately thundered, after which two players fell to the ground. They couldn't believe how NPCs could be so strong. Siri noticed Mr. Aiden and was also happy to see him awake. When the player raised his head, he looked at Aiden and realized that this was the same blacksmith guy. The guy couldn't even think what happened here, but most likely the player was walking around looking for valuable things. He never learned anything after that incident. The player pulled out a weapon from his inventory and began to attack. Didn't Aiden realize how much trouble he was causing these two? But he was stopped by Jake's fist. How dare this worthless player attack the highly respected Mr. Aiden? This guy couldn't believe what was going on here if he was a player chosen by the system. Then what kind of place is this, if they had no privileges here? Aiden admitted his guilt because this would not have happened if he had managed to upgrade their gear that day. They must have had a hard time, and after thinking for a while, the guy made a decision. He will upgrade their gear again for free as an apology. He assured them that there was no need to worry and that everything would be done well. With a blow from his hammer, Aiden completely destroyed their equipment. With tears in their eyes, the two players ran out of the village at the speed of light, promising that they would return here again to destroy everyone. Mr. Aiden asked Siri to add them to the blacklist and let her use any means, but do everything to ensure that they do not return to this village. As long as he is the moderator of this place, players will not be allowed to do whatever they want here. They will no longer have to bust their asses for them. It looks like they won't be able to hide for long, and a lot of players will be coming here soon, so they should start preparing. It will only be a matter of time before the operators find out about this place, so they need a plan. Since this village's system was different from others, they didn't know what the operators would do. Therefore, we need to attract as many players here as possible. Jake said they should hide so rumors wouldn't spread, but the guy said they'd be discovered sooner or later. And if players liked the content, their influx would increase. Once this happens, neither the operators nor the moderators will be able to get rid of this place. In that case, they need to prepare well before attracting players. Standing in a circle and holding hands, Aiden said that he and Arya had been thinking about this for a long time and he planned to do it when everyone was gathered, and asked them not to be surprised and also not to let go of his hand. After this, a huge dome of energy formed around them. After that, they all moved together into the system space. Siri and Jake were in complete shock as they saw this for the first time. Aiden assured them that everything was fine and that they should remain calm. Now he will give them some of his power. After the moderator rights were divided among everyone, the cloud was open and now they could use the cloud storage. This will help them manage and protect the village. They and Arya had already put their collected things there, so let them use them to their heart's content. Aiden will do everything he can to protect the village, and now they need to get much more serious. The players saw the testing tower from afar and now visited the village even more often. Everything went according to plan. Players began to gather. The tower played the role of bait perfectly. Players seemed to enjoy what they were doing, but they still had a lot of work ahead of them. All Aiden did was make some changes to the tower. This new content has brought in a lot of problem players, and because of them, his karma has decreased. Anyway, Aiden thanked Thio for his help. The man said that the gentleman was flattering him because he was simply doing his duty as a guard. The tower was in good condition, and there were more modes than before, such as survival, puzzles, or buffs. The players clearly enjoyed it, and it was worth continuing to work in the same spirit. Aiden said that Theo could always turn to him if he needed anything, but the goal was to attract as many players as possible. If they come here and see the positives, what players want most is development. A new update has been released in the tower. Now players will receive rewards as well as double experience while in the tower. Players saw this for the first time as there had never been such updates before. That wasn't all either. For completing quests from the villagers, they would receive buffs. The event lasted for 2 hours. Players immediately panicked and wanted to get their rewards as quickly as possible. The ploy worked perfectly. Theo said that Mr. Aiden was excellent as always. Arya thought that now that he had everyone's attention, everyone would be watching them and she couldn't let her guard down. The operators will also find out about everything soon. She needs to contact Mia and find out the information. In many cities of this world, players received a call that the village of Ursh, which was blocked, was updated with new content. All the players rushed to run to this village before a lot of people gathered there. Their conversation was overheard by Lady Procyon, who was hiding behind her hood and eating an apple. In the Hydra Guild's conference room, a meeting of the leaders was taking place. People were discussing how everything was fine in their territory and everything was under control in Leon as well. There has been no news from downtown for a long time. One of the guild members said that he heard that the entire department was destroyed and paid for its weakness. The leader of the Hydra Guild, Douglas, called Avon, forcing him to answer and warning him not to lie. The guy said that everything was going well, and they were monitoring the hunting grounds and successfully completing tasks, but suddenly a player appeared. Perhaps she is a ranker. Yvonne specially prepared a photograph for evidence. The leader thought this girl looked familiar because of her blue hair. One of the guys present got an emergency call. He was told that players had found new content. Everyone was confused because no one had received any notifications. It seems that a tower has been spotted in the village of Ursh. According to players, there are great rewards for completing quests there. The guild leader inquired who controlled this territory. Most likely no one had occupied it yet. But it couldn't be that none of the 5 main guilds knew about it. He had to move urgently. Now all the players will start flocking to see the update, the consequences of which will be unimaginable. They had to take the territory before other guilds did so. The man ordered an elite squad to be sent there and preparations to begin immediately. Has the moderator finally decided to add an update after 1,000 years? But why so suddenly? Their conversation was overheard by Virus, who appeared from behind the guild leader. It was another powerful virus called Regan. The man had previously asked not to appear so abruptly, but he didn't care what he said. Regan asked to be brought up to date on the update immediately. But no one was sure about it yet, because no notifications came. All that is known is that the event is taking place in the village of Urch. It was hard to imagine that the current moderator was capable of coming up with content, because only one person is capable of this. This must be the kid Worm has his eye on since he has moderator rights. Worm said not to stand out, but who said he would listen to him? I wonder what expression he'll have when Regan catches him first. The virus ordered to send them there because they needed to capture someone. Douglas asked not to talk nonsense because they were still in the testing stage. If the moderator finds out, they will be finished. The virus replied that there was no need to worry about it since the moderators and operators were currently busy with other things. He was confident that the cheaters they created would do a good job of the task. At this point, in the operator meeting room, Drake aggressively asked Mia what she meant. The girl replied that she was leaving her position as operator. Everyone in the room looked at each other, not believing what was happening. But why did it all happen so suddenly? What was he surprised about? She had been thinking about it for a long time because she became an operator to help Arya. She welcomed her, a child no one wanted, with open arms. And then Mia realized that she was the only person in this world she could trust. The girl had planned to wait for her return, but that was no longer necessary. Drake asked who Arya was, but Zenon replied that they didn't know her, since she was part of the previous group of operators. She and Mia are the only ones left here from those times. After that, the girl stood up from her seat and said that she was leaving and perhaps they would see each other again sometime. A little later, she would return the holy weapon in good condition. But the operator Zenon called out to her. Did she really think that she could just leave like that? Was he trying to stop her? He had no reason to, but the moderator's orders meant he couldn't just let her go. He asked if she was going to look for Arya. Did Mia forget that Arya broke a taboo by wanting something she shouldn't? She put the moderator in danger. He was replaced after that incident. The girl performed the duties of the operator perfectly, and Zeno did not want to do this to an old friend, but the moderator's orders were not to be questioned, so she should not make a mistake. The girl replied that he simply didn't understand anything, and that he should try to stop her if he could. Mia jumped from the castle wall. Zeno followed her to catch up with her. The other operators watched this and wondered why it happened when Procyon was not around. Isabel suggested that they follow them. Selena refused to take part in this because she believed that she would only interfere with them, and therefore would not interfere in their showdown. Explosion after explosion occurred in the sky. Mia tried to stop the pursuit. Zeno tried to stop her with his sword, but he missed every time. Mia used her ability, gathered a sphere of destruction, and directed it at the operator. After this, an explosion occurred, but Zeno managed to dodge it. The girl reigned in her chaos of fire. She directed her fireballs over and over again. Their battle escalated to new heights, with everything around them on fire and a vortex forming in the center. The other moderators watched from the mountain. The battle between these two had to be stopped immediately. But if Drake goes there alone, he will be killed immediately. The girl offered to go and help Zeno. Operator Lloyd ordered Mia to stop immediately and blocked the blows with his sword. Did he really want to stand in her way too? Lloyd explained that Zeno was right, and they had to follow the moderator's orders. Breaking a taboo is a great sin. Helping someone like Arya will only harm the entire world. Mia ordered him to shut up and prepared to attack Lloyd. Gathering all her strength into a fist, she punched the cameraman in the stomach. He did not expect such force and flew into the rocks. His landing left a crater and everything around was covered in dust. Those pathetic operators had no idea why Arya did this. She did everything for the moderator. If they still wanted to stop her, then let them get ready, because she was not going to hold back any longer. He couldn't imagine that he could go down from just one blow. And how do you order her to be stopped then? Commands are useless against the operator. The female operator flew up from behind. Mia, trying to grab her with her sharp swords, immediately threw her away, after which a huge explosion occurred, but the girl, thank God, managed to escape. Drake watched their battle and thought that Mia didn't seem like herself right now. He didn't know that there could be such a huge difference between operators. Lloyd called Isabel to make sure she was okay. He wasn't sure that the two of them would be able to defeat Mia, as he didn't expect her to be that strong. Her blow had left his entire body numb. Isabel hadn't experienced this feeling for a long time and immediately rushed into the attack. Drake was very worried about her since she didn't have a chance to resist Mia, and they should have at least attacked together. The girl didn't care. She always wanted to fight with the strongest operator, but the only one who would be suitable for the status of the strongest is Arya. Behind her, Mia saw a flash of light. It was the cameraman, Lloyd, who was preparing to deliver a powerful blow. At first, the girl managed to dodge his attacks, but then Isabel's sharp swords appeared in front of her face. A thick cloud of dust rose up in the arena. Lloyd hoped that this would finally work, but the girl warned him not to let his guard down. Suddenly, a beam of red approaching light appeared from behind a thick cloud of smoke. The girl shouted to the operator so that he could react in time. One small ball generated several large explosions. The strength of these two was running out, and their bodies were badly injured. Mia became like a different person and looked more like an invincible monster. Above her, she gathered a ball of energy so huge that it resembled the sun. Her hand rose and directed it at her opponents. But at that moment, fortunately, Zeno appeared, who managed to parry her strongest blow. Everything around flew apart with great force. Xena noted that Mia had become stronger compared to when she first became an operator. They definitely wouldn't be able to defeat her at this rate. His mask disappeared from his face. Did he decide to become more serious? The girl's power shouldn't be used like that, but he had no choice. After all, the moderator's orders were unquestionable. At this point, Aiden was defeating mythical creatures to level up. Today, he was already level 250. He never thought that he could raise his levels so easily. The sandbox area was all cleared out, and that was exactly the kind of territory he needed. The guy asked Theo to give him more difficult mobs next time. The tower guard asked if he was sure because he thought that Mr. Aiden should rest. But he should work while he was in that frame of mind. Arya was standing to the side, and he asked her what she thought about it. The girl was sad because of the fact that Mia still hadn't sent her a reply. She said that something happened to her, she should go to one place, but Aiden has Theo so they can cope without her. With the help of her energy, she rose upward, leaving cracks in the ground. The guy was curious about where she went, but he assured himself that everything would be fine with her. Siri contacted Aiden and reported that a huge crowd of players was approaching the village. But this time, it was different. The girl said that she thought they were members of one of the Great Five Guilds. At this time in the arena, Isabel couldn't believe that when Zenon took off his mask, his level increased. She couldn't even imagine that he was hiding such a huge power. When she asked him earlier why he needed a mask, he didn't give a normal answer. To think that they are from the same family of dragonoids! At that moment, Zeno suddenly flew up to Mia, holding the blade to her throat. The girl managed to dodge, but the blow created a huge canyon. The man tried to overpower her, trying to land more blows, but the only thing he did was leave a few cuts on his hand. Zeno was about to deliver the final blow, but Mia seemed to have gained new strength. Looking at her, the guy thought that she was only making things more difficult. Drake, who was watching this, saw Mia's Punisher mode for the first time. Did this mean she was cornered? The girl with an unperturbed look made something similar to a portal appear above Zeno. From there, in an instant, a stream of energy gushed out, which demolished everything that was underneath it. Luckily, the guy managed to jump away from that spot and land near the cliff. Mia was about to strike again with her new power, but the only thing she managed to do was loosen the soil around it. The operators watched their fight and were amazed that even Zeno had a hard time dealing with the girl's attacks, and perhaps he should have used a weapon. It was the only way to stop Mia. The only thing left for him to do was to take out the demonic blade. Everyone looked in horror and did not understand what he was doing. While Mia reached out to him with her huge paws, he stood still. In a second, Zenon made numerous swings of his blade with which he was able to defeat Mia. But how was that even possible? Lloyd didn't even have time to blink. Zenon told Mia that with the power given to him by the moderators, he was depriving her of her post. It would not be good if today's situation were to repeat itself again, so he took away her weapon. She should be a good girl. From this moment on, the operator's rights have been removed. A little later, the moderator will decide what to do with it. At that moment, a strong energy appeared around. It was Arya who came to save Mia.